Clock on the wall doesn't quite say 5:30, but my phone says 5:30, so I think we'll go ahead and start. This is the regular meeting of the Open Space Advisory Committee. It's October 17th. I'd like to welcome everyone here. Welcome our board members. We'll start with a roll call and determination of a quorum.
Chairperson Scott.
Here.
Vice Chair Welch.
Here.
Member Evans. Member Fitzsimmons. Member Hall. Member Inverson.
Here.
Member Masad.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. At this point, we will call for public comments. It's nice to see some public out there. Are there any members of the public who would like to say something regarding a topic which is not a specific agenda item? All right. You'll have more opportunities. The next thing is approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was August 15th, 2016. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes from August 15th? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the minutes of our last meeting, August 15th, 2016. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Okay. Do we have any modifications to the agenda?
No modifications, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, our first meeting item is an important one. We're welcoming our new member, Jeremy Hall. And Jeremy is up here with us. Have you met Jeremy?
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Laura.
Good to have you with us. Did you have anything formal you wanted to say, Ann? Anything?
I'll just provide a few words. So Jeremy joins us after Toby Wellborn's absence and moved to the Portland area. Jeremy was selected among 5 candidates who were interviewed by the Board of Supervisors, and Jeremy has an amazing background in cultural resources and GIS, so I'm really looking forward to working with him on this committee and through his expertise.
Great, thank you. And Jeremy's application is included in our packet. Pretty impressive. I'm glad none of us would have to go through that, Jeremy, but nice to have you with us, and feel free to speak up. We look forward to your input.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay, we have a number of things on the agenda tonight. I want to give everyone a chance to speak as they may wish, but I do want to try to move through the agenda as best we can, so we'll try to find a balance there. Our first item, our second item, 3B, is discussion regarding Jake Cordanoy, Eagle Scout project for Ash Canyon area. Rich, do you want to introduce that?
Sure. If I can, I'd like to backtrack a little bit for not only the public, but also for Jeremy and talk a little bit about how we got here with this grant. Since 2012, Juan Guzman started working with Lynn Zong with RCI, and the goal was to take money that's dedicated to road maintenance in Ash Canyon and see if we can match it with a grant. So at that time, Juan and Lynn put in for a grant through the NDP 319 program, and the grant is to do work, erosion control work in Ash Canyon. The first step with that grant was to establish a Ash Canyon erosion control plan, and that was formally approved in 2014. And so this year, Jake is helping us implement some of the best management practices for Ash Canyon with that grant. So Jake put a little biography together for me. He's a Carson City resident, a Life Scout member for the Troop 341. He's 16-year-old. He's been a Boy Scout since he was 14. He's been working towards this project for many months, and he's excited to see it become a reality on October 22nd. Besides Scouts, Jake enjoys many outdoor sports, including being a member of the new mountain bike team for Carson High School. He's very familiar with Ash Canyon. He enjoys training on some of Carson City's roads and trails, and he also enjoys skiing and rock climbing. So Jake, you're welcome to come up and present to the board your PowerPoint.
Thank you, Rich.
So for those of you who didn't hear, my name is Jake Cordonaway. I'm a Life Scout of Troop 340.
Excuse me, Jake, could you push the button and then it'll light up? The button is on the base.
Oh,
There is no button, is
there's
it?
no button.
Is he live? Okay.
Here.
As long as I've
Closer.
got him interrupted, I would note that member Laura Fitzsimmons joined us somewhere between my 5:30 and that clock's 5:30. And she brought her own music, but I think we've got that covered now, so. Thank you. Jake, go ahead, excuse me.
Okay, so as I was saying, I'm a Boy Scout here in Troop 341. I've been working towards my Eagle Scout for almost 2.5 years now. I'm 17, it's actually almost 3 years now. And I'm glad to be so close to achieving this goal. So without further ado, I'd like to present my project. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be planting trees, shrubs, saplings in areas that have been eroded by careless motorists over in Ash Canyon. So they've kind of created their own roads, and it's affecting the city's municipal water supply. So my project will correct that by erosion control. We're going to plant a whole bunch of stuff in that area. We're going to block off the roads that have been made so that they can't be created again, and all our hard work destroyed. And then we're going to be digging a ditch that'll direct all the water that does still flow away from the municipal water supply. So we have 2 different areas that we're going to be working in, both of them right off of the Ash Canyon Road. The project is set to go October 22nd with the help of Troop 341, my family, my friends. We have about 30 volunteers as of now, so we'll be good to go with that. It's going to be at 8:30. We're going to have parking at an open spot up there. I talked to somebody I know, and he said he'll be able to get us a spot up there that people can park, so we don't have to worry about a shuttle service. We're going to be working on about an acre total, so we're going to divide up into 2 crews, and then we're going to have a leader in each crew that'll oversee that area, and then I'll be overseeing the entire project. You can go to, yeah. So some of the supplies that we're going to need the tool trailer, the cleanup trailer that's going to be provided by Carson City Open Space. That's going to have all the tools that we're going to need. And then seeds and logs are provided by the Nevada Division of Forestry. They have some leftover seeds in their seed bank from the 2005 waterfall fire that we're going to use up there. And then logs are also going to be donated by Nevada Division of Forestry. We've been in contact with the Nevada Division of Forestry Nursery in Washoe Valley, and we're going to have big mountain sagebrush, forage cochia, 4-wing saltbush, Mormon tea, Great Basin wild rye, ponderosa pine, blue bunch wheatgrass, and antelope bitterbrush. That's the seed mix and the saplings that we're going to be planting up there. And I am asking all volunteers to bring a water bottle, sunscreen, long pants, gloves, sturdy shoes, hat, and glasses. So looking at the slide, that's the first site. So the one on the left is looking south towards the Ash Canyon Road. Motorists have gone up there. They've created their own roads, and it's eroding into. You can see the water towers off to the right or to the left in that picture, and it's eroding into there, affecting the water. So we're going to drag logs across those roads, block them off, and then plant seeds and shrubs and trees in there. That's site 2. That site is a little bit steeper. It's a little bit more technical to get stuff in there because it's a lot steeper on the side. So, but we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be blocking off the road that leads there, and then we're going to be planting and scarifying the ground, planting seeds and saplings. Next. So as you can see, I did some work on Google Earth, and as of 2010, there was a road there, but it wasn't nearly as prominent as it is now. So if you go to the next slide, you can see how it develops even more. And then if you go to the 2015 slide, it's almost a fully developed road, but it's not an official road, just because of the location of it. So the day before the project, Friday, October 21st, we've hired a private contractor that will drag logs to the 2 locations that'll block off the roads, and then I will be driving to the nursery in Washoe Valley to pick up all the plants that we need. So I have a trailer. I'm going to be there the day before. Next. And for October 22nd, everybody's going to show up around 8:30. We'll have a planting, tool use, and safety demonstration by the Open Space Committee and Nevada Division of Forestry. And then we'll begin our project around 9 o'clock after we have like a safety briefing. We go over everything. And then we'll work diligently from about 9 o'clock until 12:30, doing all that stuff. And then at 12:30, we'll take a break for lunch. We'll get all refueled. And then after lunch, we'll do the finishing touches. We'll water the plants, give them a good water to get them started off strong. And we'll clean up all the tools, and then we'll be done. And I'd just like to give a special thanks to the Nevada Division of Forestry, who's graciously donated logs and seeds, all the volunteer labor from Troop 341, the Carson City Open Space Committee, and my family and friends who have supported me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Don't go away. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Donna?
Is this state land, forest land, private land? Whose land is this?
It's the city's land. It's on. Some of it is the Freemasons' land up there, and then some of it's the Carson City Open Space land. So we're working on 2 different areas.
Yeah, just to clarify a little bit, it's Nevada Division of State Lands under a current lease with Carson City.
And the second question is, are you going to put those cotton picking little plastic sleeves around the trees?
We aren't planning on it now.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Any public comment or questions? Anything from staff?
Just wanted to add a little bit more. I'd like to give a special thanks to Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. This is where the funding's coming from. Also, Jake, I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work. He has been working probably the last 2 solid months on this, so thank you very much, Jake.
Thank you, Rich.
Looks like a great project, Jake. We really appreciate it. The watershed can use it. You may even see some new water channels up there after this last weekend, so.
Definitely.
Okay.
I have something to add, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Jeremy.
Jake, I think this is awesome. This is my backyard, so this is where I play too. So it's cool to hear that there's other guys out there that showing this kind of interest in reclaiming. The only question I had was, and you may have covered it, so I apologize if you did. How are you planning on watering the plants, getting water up to the sites?
So we have a water tank that I'm going to be going up there with Rich, and we're going to water them like weekly or bi-weekly or however we have to do it to keep them strong. But we're going to have to get them started off the day of, we're going to have a water truck up there that'll be supplying water to them when we get them in the ground.
Thanks. Again, good job.
Thank you.
Okay, Jake, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and thanks for your help.
Thank
It's
you.
going to be a good project.
All right.
Thank
thanks.
you. Okay, our next agenda item is discussion and possible action to authorize staff to begin a trails inventory on the south end of Prison Hill Recreation Area and recommend staff to include time on the next annual work plan and funding in the next annual budget towards evaluating the potential of motorized events on the south end of the Prison Hill Recreation Area. And that's been an area that's had motorized vehicles for some time. That's part of the BLM, what we acquired from the BLM, and we do have a designated area for motorized vehicles. So with that, Ann, is that you?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will cover this item. This is a new item, generally speaking, in front of the committee. Yes, the land transferred to us from BLM, and we were aware of motorized activity at the south end of Prison Hill, and our management plan talked about trails in general for all of our lands that we manage along the river. What is new to this committee is reviewing the potential for motorized events. This is also new to staff in preparation of the land exchange from BLM. We did talk with them about the events that they permitted, which were primarily at Silver Saddle Ranch. So we had a background on those events, what type of events, how often, the number of people, and all their environmental documentation that came along with that in their review processes. So when this request came to us about a month ago, I believe, about 6 weeks ago, it was something new for us. We just we had not considered it. And so there were a number of items that we did. One was another follow-up with BLM. And so with me, I do have a summary of an email in the conversation that I had with Arthur Callan at BLM. He stated that they did not issue permits for any motorized events on the south end of Prison Hill due to the close proximity to the neighbors. When they do issue permits elsewhere, they have a minimum of a 180-day application requirement. If we, BLM, if we, Carson City, permits events, Arthur recommends the following. The applicant should identify the scope, including type of vehicles, are the vehicles driven or brought by trailer, and if the event is advertised. The stipulations should limit the number of participants, identify requirements of staying on existing roads and trails, fire restrictions, no exclusive use, hours of use, etc. How will staff identify the existing roads and trails? Will ravines be used or not, and how will we monitor that? And we should provide a notification to the neighbors. And since Arthur and the BLM did manage this properties since about the 70s, was their first environmental plan, and Arthur's been with the BLM several years, decades. He did provide an opinion that he thought 25 Jeeps on Prison Hill seems reasonable, 50 does not. With that in mind, and in consideration of the request that we had some from members of the community, with Jen and Rich and the Visitors Bureau, the Jeep Club, because there are various users in this area. There's dirt bikes, ATVs, and Jeeps, and particularly tonight it is some of the Jeep users that would like to provide their comments to the committee. So we did meet with them. We provided some of our background about the property, about the conservation easement, the programmatic agreement, a lot of the restrictions that we are held accountable to. And so at least at this point, I think they have a good understanding of that. But to move forward, we talked about what are the next steps. And so I think at this time, with our limited staff time and budget, we can move forward with a trails inventory, so we have an idea of what trails are out there, the condition of the trails, are they suitable or not. For example, one of my personal experiences on Prison Hill, a couple years ago, I was driving our Chevy Tahoe on one of the trails on the east side of the motorized area. A couple years ago, that road was fine. Last year, I tried driving it and almost ended up into a ravine because it had eroded so bad. So we really need a good assessment of what the trail conditions are. If they're poor, maybe they're closed, but I don't know. Right now, I just don't have that information. And are the trails safe for use? As we consider events, there's other things the city does require for events, such as insurance, toilets, whether food and health permits are necessary, and we need to identify the risk to the city as well. I do believe as we evaluate the property for events, we should also include the neighbors in this discussion on the impacts on the neighbors, potential noise and dust, hours of use as well. And the capacity, what kind of capacity? Similar to the email from BLM, are 25 Jeeps enough, 50, 100? I don't know, but I need professionals to help provide guidance for us. Are there any questions?
And if I can summarize then, we have no guidelines in place now for formal events. The BLM didn't have any either, although they had at least verbally indicated some guidelines they might consider had they a formal request. But we do have interest locally, as I understand it, to try to do something up there. And so we're trying to find a balance of, because we don't really have any formal process, it's obviously open informally today, and we're trying to find a balance in the short term, and you're asking for consideration of starting a more scientific review of the situation on the ground, so we'll have a basis to begin to maybe develop some guidelines for any kind of a formal request or a formal activity up there going forward. Is that a fair summary?
Thank you. Yes, that's a
Okay.
fair summary.
Okay, with that, I'd like to call for public comment and ask anyone in the audience who would like to provide some background to us. I'd like to have the public comment, and then we'll open it up to the committee. But I'd appreciate getting a feel for public input here. Good evening.
Good evening. First time I've stood here before this microphone. My name is Larry Calkins. I live down in Dayton, but for 20-some years I owned Capital Automotive right near Jerry's Restaurant. And so I'm pretty well versed in Carson City. I am president of the Nevada Four-Wheel Drive Association. What we are is a statewide group of interested four-wheel drive advocates representing ATVs, UTVs, Jeeps, trucks, etc. We are not involved with motorcycles per se. The association is primarily dedicated to keeping open public lands. We spend many, many hours poring over documents from BLM Forest Service, and we've been involved with the State OHV Commission on a monthly basis. So we're active in this, and we've been doing this. Personally been involved in it for over 40 years in the land use end of things, both in California, and I've lived up here for about 25 years. Going on with that, many nonprofit organizations in our groups, our member clubs, our state association would like very much to be able to use the Prison Hill, the South Prison Hill area for a fundraising events. We've done many of these. We just concluded a fundraising event out of Dayton. It was a poker run, and it raised about $1,000 for the association, and it was fairly well attended. What we would do is we would like to be involved in the inventory of the trails and perhaps suggest a trail rating system from something similar to the way ski trails are rated, from an easy, an intermediate, and perhaps if there's some up there hard and extreme, if there's some areas that can be used for extreme. We can bring forward a lot of volunteers. We have 5 member clubs in this area, and the Parks and Recreation are already familiar with the Sierra Stompers out of Gardnerville, who have done some cleanup and maintenance up at the South Prison Hill area. They are members of our association and have done this volunteer work. We also would bring in people from other clubs to do volunteer work, such as cleanups, doing this inventory, perhaps looking at ways to mitigate problems with perhaps runoff, wind-borne problems, problems with neighbors, with noise. I would suggest there be a noise limit put on all permitted events so that we don't disturb people. We don't want open mufflers and things like that. We just want to be good neighbors and have some nice events up there. Now, what is the total benefit to this? It would bring people to Carson City to participate in these events. That means hotel rooms, that means food, that means gas, that means broken part replacement, things like that that seem to be a part of our sport. So anyway, I urge you to go ahead with this, and we really would like to see something created where we could hold these events, and perhaps they would be the center of some events that might expand to include some BLM trails. There's several out of the Dayton area that we use regularly, and we could put together larger events and perhaps have something that really benefits Carson City. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you go, are there questions from the committee at this point? Yes, Alan.
Do you have a guess as to how many events you might end up being in a year?
Well,
I'm not trying to pin you down, but just so we had a sense for what the demand might be.
What we started to do, and I think Mr. O was going to talk to you here about this event as well. This started out at a meeting at the Carson City Visitors Bureau, and Rich was there, and a number of us in the OHV community. And the Carson City Visitors Bureau really wanted to go forward with this. So initially what we thought we could put a small event together, for a small group of vehicles on a one-time thing, and it turned out then that Rich said we probably have a problem with Parks and Recreation and holding an event up there, and that turns out to be the case because there's no way to put together an event. I would think initially we would want to start out with just a small event. You could limit the number of events per year that are put on up there as part of your planning. But I could see where, looking into a fishbowl somewhere down the line, if everything worked out well, this could even turn out to be something of the magnitude of Easter Jeep Safari in Moab, Utah, which just brings thousands and thousands of people for 1 week of trail rides and events and manufacturers displays and parades and things like that. I mean, we're not looking at that right now. We're just looking at being able to perhaps want to hold some club events and maybe an association event there yearly. So I don't know how to answer your question. It all depends on how it grows, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee at this point? Jerry.
Hi, it's my understanding you guys are having some sort of a meeting or gathering out there this weekend on the 22nd?
Not that I'm aware of.
It's not a sanctioned event or something?
No, nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay, so you don't have any idea
It's not nothing I'm involved in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand that you don't have an answer at this point on how many events per year, but in order, you do have similar events. How many actual vehicles is a mid-size event for you?
Okay. We had a small event out of Dayton, as I said. It turned out to be about 15 vehicles on the trail, plus the committee that were involved. Now, this was a poker run, and it was across private lands and some county roads. So we had a total attendance maybe of 80 people there, and it ended with a raffle. But I've been involved in the California Association's Sierra Trek, which is a very large event. And for our 25th anniversary, which is quite a few years ago, but it was the highest we've ever had, we had 2,500 people. So that's a huge event, but there's also held up in an area up north of Truckee that can support that. So the size of events range, and once again, the permitting process could put a limit on the number of vehicles involved.
For your purposes, what limit would seem reasonable?
Like 50 vehicles, which we usually figure 2.5 people per vehicle. So we're talking about 125 people plus our committee that puts it on. We'd have a few vehicles there and some more people there. Now, we would not, for what I envision, but other people might consider having food on the premises, and that probably requires some kind of a permit from, what is it? Who? Health Department. Yeah, the health department, that's who it is. was going to say the food department, the health department. The other thing is that you could require in these permits to bring in porta potties and things like that to do this. But I'd like to be involved, in the development of these trails so that we can take a look and we can keep them away from the homes where we can. Maybe we have an open play area and rank these trails and get them mapped. Maybe we put out a brochure inviting people to come to Carson City to do OHV recreation. I think I went way over my 3 minutes.
I think when we're asking questions, and also take your time, this is very important.
Yeah.
We're very interested in it. Another question that I have, though, is you talk about ranking the trails like ski trails. So you have, diamonds and the ones I'm on, the little blue dots.
Yeah, sure.
But at least my personal concern would be environmentally, what the impact could be to those trails. How would you, and that would probably be determinations made by others, that understand the potential environmental impact of something like this. Would you then provide, theoretically, the personnel to regulate the use so that trails which are deemed to be not appropriate for this kind of use would not be used in these kind of events?
I think that what we would do is, in the kind of events that I've been involved in, is we would only designate certain trails to be used in them as part of the event. Now, we may very well, let's say that we have an event and we bring in 50 vehicles. And maybe we have 3 different levels of difficulty on these trails, and these folks can sign up to go on 1, 2, or 3. We could designate the trails that are the 1, 2, and 3 ranked trails. Yeah.
And in terms of making sure that people stay on those trails, you wouldn't be monitoring that? You just would be anticipating that your membership or the participants would just stay on those marked trails?
Yeah, I know what you're getting at there. Yeah, we would try our best to keep them on those trails. But if we're working with Parks and Recreation, we have volunteer help. There should be a good way to, we should be able to have enough help up there to where we could put barricades or define the limits of these trails as they go through so that they're not going off on anything that's sensitive. Okay.
Go ahead, Chair.
Now, I'm not familiar at all with your sport.
Sure.
And I'm just curious, is this a race? Or is it just an ability kind of test?
Yes, in what we look at from where I stand on the kind of events we would want to put on, no, it is not a competition event of any type. However, different vehicles are built to different specifications. You have stock vehicles, you have mildly modified, you have highly modified vehicles, and we would like to be able to take and put the appropriate vehicles on the appropriate trails. Yeah.
Hey, Larry, I have a quick question.
Sure.
One of the concerns that Ann identified from the neighbors' noise you addressed but dust. Yeah. In your experience with these events, is there a way that you can limit or control the amount of dust that's kicked up?
The amount of dust that's kicked up is usually very little because we move very slowly. The tougher the terrain is and the more built the vehicle is, the slower we move over it. So dust that we kick up is not a problem, other than the fact that on a really windy day, if we kick up any, it's going to be blowing. That's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Donna.
You mentioned something about combining this with like other events in Dayton and getting out into the BLM lands. This area is locked. I mean, that's the only access to BLM lands that I'm aware of from this area is on streets. So, I mean, how would you handle that?
What I was saying is somewhere down the line, if we grow this to where it's not just a one-day on a Saturday afternoon event on the Prison Hill area, We may expand it to an extra day and take them through, say, the El Dorado Canyon Trail, which runs out of Dayton up to Como, or there's a number of trails up in there, and there's the potential that in this entire area, if you put in the Reno metropolitan area and slightly north of there, we probably have 40 trails that we could put together. So that would serve a large event, but that's not anything that I probably won't see it in my lifetime, but I sure, I just look at it as being a possibility. And if Carson City were the center of that, that would be a great thing for the city.
Thank you. We appreciate your willingness to try to accommodate the fact that we're in the OHV business but don't have any rules or guidelines. And so it's going to take us a while to kind of get our feet together, our thoughts together, and our activities together. But we do have an area that's designated, and we fully intend to maintain it. So we just don't have anything to work with yet. So your offer to try to help is appreciated.
I had a couple other things I didn't talk about that I probably should. You could establish a fee for fundraising events. If you've got a local club that wants to go someplace and they're just having an event of 20, 25 vehicles or something, and they decide, and that requires a permit for that, but there's no money involved in it, perhaps no fee. But if you have a fee, like my association should come and want to hold an event there, and we are going to charge our participants in that event, I don't see why you shouldn't get a cut out of that to help defray the costs of maintaining that area. That's pretty much customary anywhere we go. The other thing is that staff is limited, we know, to like 3 people to go do this, but money helps. It would be possible to prepare a grant to the State OHV Commission. There is money available there. The grant cycle is just finished, but there will be one going on probably after the beginning of the year, whereby organizations and a city or BLM or Forest Service can apply for a grant from the OHV Commission for the enhancement of OHV recreation.
Alan?
Following up on that, is that something that your group and the city together should come up with, the grant application, or what's the process for that?
Yeah, what would happen is the grant application, there is a handbook for it, and it's available from the OHV Commission. You can read through that. It probably doesn't require the services of a professional grant writer, but where it is a lot of fill in the boxes. And if the lead agency is a city and they're the ones that are going to get the money, then what we would do is we would support the city with letters of support, but they would fill out the application.
You say that sometimes your association pays fees for a permit on events that are fundraisers.
That's true.
Generally, what do those fees run? Give us a guideline of what's available for maintenance and upkeep and. Well,
right now we consider both Forest Service and the BLM's fees to be somewhat exorbitant, but what they do is they have a fee for the preparation of the permit, a permitting fee, and I don't have that handy what it is, but it's something probably $100 or something like that. That's gets the permit done. Then they take a cut of the gross on the event, and they also require that we will have a insurance policy naming BLM or the Forest Service as lost payee for any environmental damage, or if we manage to scuff a rock, that there's money available to mitigate those problems.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have other public comment?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. My name is Eddie O, and I wanted to thank Rich and Jennifer for bringing this topic up to you. There were a lot of questions being asked, and perhaps I might be a better candidate to answer a few of those, if only because I was in contact, or I should say the Carson City's Visitors Bureau contacted myself as well as a few other business owners to perhaps put together some kind of an event, and so we kind of put the idea forward. So this is kind of my doing in a way, and perhaps I might be able to answer some of your questions.
I guess I would start, Eddie, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And we realize that in some people's eyes, we may come across as being slightly disjointed at the city level, but we do appreciate your willingness to help us as we work through what on the one hand is a designated off-road vehicle area, and on the other hand, we're still really just anything formal is something we haven't had to deal with. So I guess I would just start by saying, we appreciate what Larry has told us and the answers he had. Are there any thoughts or ideas that you'd like to add to that before we get to questions from the committee?
Sure. First and foremost, I should point out that this event, this whole idea of having an event in Prison Hill was really an idea to bring people to Carson City to put heads in beds. Talking to Kyle over at the Visitors Bureau, they were looking for a way to fill in hotels, casinos, businesses and as a whole, restaurants, during months that would otherwise be somewhat vacant, late September, early October. So we kicked around a few ideas with the owner of the Firkin and Fox, Jim Phelan, as maybe some of you may know. And we thought, we might be able to put something together. As Larry had mentioned earlier, in the city of Moab, Utah, they have an event once a year during Easter time. And they use the town of Moab as kind of a base camp. It's just a place where people can stay, get organized, and then they have a series of trails all around the surrounding area, and then they use local clubs to lead small groups to individual trails throughout the area. That would essentially be the idea here. The fact that Carson City actually has a place like Prison Hill, an off-road area where vehicles can go, was a perk. And so the idea was that we might be able to use that as a kind of a main event area. There are plenty of trails far and near in Carson City. That area doesn't even need to be used to hold an event and still put heads in beds here. But being that it is a part of Carson City, my wife and I are proud of our town. We love the idea of being able to build the economy. We make nothing out of this. We're not event promoters. We don't charge anything. What we do is we do have access to a lot of people across the country. We have a social media website that's dedicated to Jeeps. So through those means, we are able to bring people from all across the country who would come to an event like that in this town. So what we were hoping was that a place like Prison Hill, a place that is a part of Carson City, someplace that we could be proud of, that's where we would hold, at least for one day, a main event. And understanding the situation at hand, clearly there are some hurdles that need to be jumped and some things that need to be figured out.
Well, thank you. We're kind of resource people, and so the OHV is a little bit foreign to us. I mean, we all know what they look like, and I'd hate to pay for a set of those Cooper tires on your website, but those 40-inch tires look like they might cost just a little bit. But,
just a little bit.
But, in my mind, from an open space perspective, if we can find the way to take advantage of what this designation already is, maintain and manage the resources, and have a benefit that could be a combination of, maybe some other larger event where we would be within the resource constraints of our area and at the same time have some of the benefits you're talking about, I can see some real advantages in a lot of ways. And open space does include OHVs. We just, as I say, we're kind of resource focused, and we just need to figure out how do we manage that part of it in the areas where we have the designation already in place.
Sure. Ideally, as I have spoken to your staff here, we would encourage the local clubs that are already in the area to help provide cleanup before and after the events. So clearly there's definitely some erosion control that could be implemented. There's certainly graffiti on some of the rocks in those areas. We have talked to Carson City Jeep. Don Radke, he's volunteered some of his help in order to get some soda blasters out there, help clean up a lot of our vehicles. Most of what we're concerned with are strictly street legal Jeeps, vehicles that you would use just to go down to the grocery store and back home again, but can also go off-roading. We're not like the crazy guys in the side-by-sides tearing up the dirt. We don't want to go off trail. As I explained to Ann earlier through email, our purpose would be to run a trail system that is predetermined and agreed upon ahead of time, and most of which would be in the open riding areas that have been already established in the Prison Hill area. So it wouldn't be creating new trails or going off into the bushes. There's specific areas designated, mostly in the rocky areas that doesn't have much vegetation. That's pretty much where we would be concentrating our efforts.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? Chairman.
Thanks, Eddie. Earlier, Larry mentioned an idea of one of the clubs actually volunteering to help with the inventory process. Do you have anything to add to that? I'm kind of curious how something like that would proceed, how you guys would rank, and how you might evaluate the trails that eventually we would everybody would come to an agreement of what the trail that would be assigned to the event would be.
I couldn't speak for Larry. I'm not a part of his club per se or any other club. How they would establish something like that, I'm not 100% sure. As it is now, looking at the maps that have already been laid out, I'm pretty satisfied with what I see. There are certainly trails within those maps on your website that just that have been there for as long as I can think of anyway. And in the open riding areas, I can't necessarily see a reason to put specific routes in the areas that have already been designated for just open riding.
How often in a year do you go up in your Jeep to the south side of Prison Hill?
Considering I'm building up my Jeeps on a regular basis, I have quite a host of Jeeps in my own garage. We're constantly making modification, testing out new parts. I'm out there often. I would say my wife and I, we go up there a couple times a month just to do some general testing. But outside of that would just be by ourselves. Periodically, we do have friends coming in from other parts of the country, and just for fun, we will take them out there to show them some of the rocks that we have.
Is the reason you go out there primarily proximity, or is there something unique about the riding out there?
It is definitely a proximity issue, but certainly the rocks in the open riding areas do allow our vehicles to be tested to their limits. As Larry had mentioned, our focus really is in terms of crawling. We move at tremendously slow speeds, and we're interested in axle articulation and being able to go up difficult rock faces that you wouldn't otherwise think is possible. And that's the fun part for us, not tearing across the desert.
Thank you. Just one general statement. We really need input from responsible OHV operators. And so as we go forward as an open space committee, we would really hope that you would be able to help us with input. We've had some vandalism issues and some other problems, and we realize that there's a very large responsible community out there of OHV users. But we will really appreciate going forward inputs and participation that you and members of your community can provide this committee, because none of us are OHV people, but we have some responsibilities and some areas that clearly lend themselves to OHV use, at least in a limited way. And so as we move forward, we would hope that you can be part of the public process as we look to implement guidelines and try to set things up so that we're in a long-term management position for our OHV responsibilities, and at the same time are hopefully providing something that's a benefit to that segment of our community.
I would like to add to that as Larry would probably agree to, there are always going to be a few bad apples in any community, and for our purposes, we don't want to go out to an area like Prison Hill and see trash everywhere. We don't want to go out there and see graffiti everywhere. We don't want to see erosion that could have been prevented or caused by other people. An event like this and the purpose of doing things like this or getting clubs involved that are in the local area is to get the people who are responsible, who do want to take care of our trails, who actually do see these things as a resource and a benefit to everybody. And we want to take care of it more than anybody really in the system. So if we can get involved on an official level, by all means, you can count on us.
No, that's great, because if you're out there, you're another set of eyes and ears from the standpoint of the resource and our responsibility, so that helps too. Jerry?
Mr. O, are you having a get-together out there this weekend?
The original plan was to have a get-together there, but we have since suspended that.
So there's not going to be anything going on out there this
There's
weekend?
not
I was just curious of the size of the event to give me an idea of scope. You know, if you had 20 vehicles out there, what the impact would be on the area, and if you had 50 out there. But if you're not having it at all, I guess I won't know that answer.
We do have friends coming up because
Great.
they have already committed themselves to
Super.
staying at the Max Casino. But no, we will not be out in the Prison Hill area.
You're not going to use Prison Hill at all then? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie.
May I answer Jeremy's question?
Come forward, please. Thanks, Larry.
I have a quick answer
And
for Jeremy's question.
reintroduce yourself, if you
Yes,
would. for
Larry
the record.
Calkins, Nevada Four-Wheel Drive Association. You asked Eddie how we would rank these trails. There's a couple of trail ranking systems out there, but our association uses a simple 1 to 5, where 1 is basically a graded road. 2 is a graded road that's got a few rocks in it, and it may require going slow, perhaps having to use four-wheel drive to do it. A 3 would be a road that would require four-wheel drive, perhaps a stock pickup truck or a stock Jeep with four-wheel drive, but definitely having to use four-wheel drive would do. 4 would be a modified four-wheel drive, requiring some clearance, larger tires, and perhaps a locking differential. And a 5, grade 5 trail requires a highly modified four-wheel drive vehicle with large tires and lockers on both ends, and so that's sort of the way we do it. And I would do it simply by going up there and looking at these areas. I can tell, I can certainly tell if I'm driving my Jeep over it.
Thanks, Larry. Is this a standard kind of set of ranking in the OHV
Well,
community?
yeah. This is the California Association's trail ranking system. As a past president of the California Association, I kind of brought that with me to the Nevada Association when we created it. Also, the United Four-Wheel Drive Associations uses the 1 to 5 trail ranking. And some of them use a 1 to 10 and define it out even in between.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Are there any other public comments on this agenda item? Okay, we have a recommendation to authorize staff to begin a trails inventory. Do we have a motion? Donna.
I move to authorize staff to begin a trails inventory on the south end of the Prison Hill Recreation Area and recommend staff to include time on the next annual work plan and funding in the next annual budget towards evaluating the potential of motorized events on the south end of Prison Hill Recreation Area. And if I could add that staff would also work with the OHV group to see if we can get a grant to fund this.
Thank you. Donna, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Alan seconds. Is there any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Me, nay.
Okay. Okay, next item, 3D, for possible action to to review restrictions, discuss current policies, and provide direction for future policies regarding events at Silver Saddle Ranch. Ann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Almost similar concept. But for Silver Saddle Ranch, we did have at least some background for BLM on some of the events that were held there. Additionally, the conservation easement identified what events we can and can't hold. And then our management plan went another step further to try and identify when those events can occur, the size, duration, time of year, et cetera. When we did develop the management plan, some of it were our guesstimates at the time, because open space really did not have experience managing events anywhere, nor did we have experience with Silver Saddle Ranch. Since that 1 year now, we have had 7 events, and we're learning each time what our capacity is out there. For example, one of the changes that we made from BLM is the Escape from Prison Hill Half Marathon. Their permit allowed 300 runners. After we acquired the property, we evaluated our parking capacity. Using standard calculations in the industry, there isn't current parking for 300 runners. So we reduced that, but we did inform the applicants that they can have 300 runners if they use a further parking area and they can shuttle in the runners. So we still provide them that option. Some of the other changes that we have made is even with the sheriff's event that happens out there, where they can and can't park, because the conservation easement again reiterates the importance of Silver Saddle Ranch, the resources, the natural resources, the plants, as well as the structures. The Carson River cleanup event is another good learning opportunity for us this year. We know we had 209 students, plus we had their instructors, the Kiwanis, the White Trash Brigade, the Key Club members from the high school. So we estimated 250 people at Silver Saddle Ranch at one time. I do have photos of that event. They were all having lunch right by the Red House, and it was comfortable. It was completely fine. The difference between the Carson River cleanup and the Escape from Prison Hill is how people arrived. So for the cleanup, they all came by school buses. So we had very little parking impact. So we're looking every day. What we haven't necessarily evaluated is our capacity to accommodate equestrian events. And probably some of that is the type of event. Is it a trail trials event? Are they just parking the trailers and taking off on the trails? Or are they doing obstacles within the arena? If they need the arena, then we do not have that area to park trailers, so we're limited in that capacity. So that's one example of a request that we've had. But another request, and this is really why I would like some discussion from this committee, what do you see for the future of Silver Saddle Ranch? What type of events? How long do they go into the day? So for example, another request that I've received, and fortunately this is a request for next September, so at least this gal is thinking ahead, but it's for a wedding. And so her first request was to use Silver Saddle Ranch next September until 10 p.m. at night. Our park ranger is normally scheduled to finish his shift about a half hour after sunset. We like our park ranger on during the daytime hours when most people are outside recreating, and so he can be seen. So whether we keep him on shift later into the evening or some other accommodations. One of the other constraints I've informed this gal is we don't have much lighting out there. So that would be a safety concern where everyone parks their cars. We have lights by the Red House, but we don't have lights by the parking. So those are just some of the considerations. For other events that the city and our department has held, we have required security for the event. So that is something that we could add to their permit. So a couple other items I included in your packet is what are our current department-wide policies. So at this present time, it also does carry over to open space as we're accepting reservations. We do require deposits, and insurance is required for every event. Equipment rental is limited to the on-site availability. Currently, we have 2 picnic tables. We do want to increase that back to 4, what BLM had. Extra equipment may be rented from an outside supplier. Event setup and cleanup is the complete responsibility of the renter. It's not responsibility of staff. Reservation requests must be received a minimum of 30 working days in order to allow time for review, necessary permits, and other potential items. And the last one, reservations are not available on holidays or holiday weekends, because usually staff are off on those weekends. There's exceptions like Nevada Day, of course, we need staff because of the parade that happens downtown, and 4th of July because of the fair at Mills Park. So there are exceptions, but generally we don't accept reservations on holidays or holiday weekends. Are there any questions? And I hope that that's a good background for discussion.
Can you reiterate what you'd like us to offer you feedback on, Ann, so we can focus up here? And
I would like your direction on the events at Silver Saddle. Do we want events that continue late into the night after sunset? And if so, how do we manage that with staffing levels? Is just one of the starting points.
Okay, Laura?
This is exactly the same reason I voted no on the last item. You say staff, you say we. I know how hard each of you work, and I know that we have delineated things, we'll deal with it later in the agenda, that we just haven't been able to get to, basic things, because of staffing shortage. And if you're dealing with a wedding planner on a wedding in Silver Saddle, or you're talking about, at this point, you know, if we had additional staffing, it's sounding to me it's morphing into between the, you know, ultimately these perhaps, you know, events in Prison Hill and at Silver Saddle. It sounds to me like it's another staff person. I don't understand how you guys are going to take this on. And so that's my concern. It's not the activity. It's we have a clear understanding of things that we have prioritized that we wish we had done a year or two ago. And believe me, I know how hard you work. It's not a criticism. It's amazing what you can do. But these are just more balls in the air. So that's why, I mean, the activities may or may not be appropriate environmentally, but I just don't know how you handle these calls.
Other comments from the committee? Donna?
I have one question. Now, my memories can be a little foggy sometimes, but I seem to remember there was some discussion when we acquired Anderson Ranch about some equestrian events over there, or parking for equestrian events at Silver Saddle, or using that portion for some stuff at Silver Saddle. So are we only looking at Silver Saddle, or are we considering the whole area? Because it is kind of, they're very close to each other.
Sure, and just for clarification for this committee and the public, so the Anderson Ranch is located across, this Anderson Ranch is located across the street from Silver Saddle Ranch on Carson River Road. Anderson Ranch is 77 acres. It's part of the larger Old Buzzies Ranch. So currently, the sellers, when we purchase those properties, as long as they hold water rights and apply it to the land for irrigation, they reserve the exclusive right for grazing. So currently, we cannot use those properties. However, the purchase and sale agreement does, on the Girard property, which is the larger parcel near to the river, did allow an easement, for lack of a better term. It's not an easement, but the right to build a trail along the river. When we look at a larger loop trail in that system, the purchase and sale deed agreement did give us the opportunity to go back and talk with them if we had other projects. So it didn't close the door on that, Donna.
We did have a number, 3 or 4 years ago, a fairly large equestrian event that made arrangements with Mickey Anderson to park in the pasture. But that was kind of a special arrangement with him and not something that was formal through. I mean, the city was aware of it, but it was a kind of an arrangement with the operator type of thing. Other comments, questions? How about public comment?
Sure, I can comment.
Jeremy? As a member of the public,
As a member
As a member of the committee, why don't you comment?
Both.
Yeah, it's both. Just thinking about the lighting that, that you mentioned, I tend to think that at, you know, a place where it's, we've got multiple cultural resources that have been designated to the National Register of Historic Places, that introducing something like lighting is introducing some liability that we might not want to deal with. And so I'm leaning towards the dawn to dusk. I think that BLM's already established that 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, I mean, it would be unfortunate for this individual who wants to do it in September, but I guess if you really wanted to have your wedding at Silver Saddle, then June, July, plenty light. And it would take away that that red flag of the lighting and, you know, people drinking whenever, and just reduce the liability that, you know, could be introduced in this.
Thank you, Jeremy. You bring up a good point. We have a whole set of guidelines that we don't normally think about with the historic side. So, are there any public comments, any input? Nancy, nice to see you.
For the record, I'm Nancy Santos, President of Friends of Silver Saddle. My concerns primarily are that I know we do have nesting great horned owls that use the trees in the Red House complex. They're usually out after dark, but my main thing is they nest there usually from, say, February to March, so the weddings in September aren't a problem. But I'd just like us to consider natural resources when we plan these events, and how many are we going to have, and all that, you know, different stuff that they're considered in that. And that's my main concern.
Thank you, Nancy. And it seems to me that, particularly at Silver Saddle, we have some guidelines, some history on some things. We have restrictions on the kinds of events we can have there. And then you have something like the wedding question that comes up that raises the sort of possible concerns or questions that you're bringing to us tonight. I think Laura makes a really good point. You're not doing enough, and you're not doing it fast enough. So how do we fix that? Isn't that what you said?
Absolutely.
I say that tongue in cheek, and you don't need to defend her, Jennifer. I'm just giving her a bad time. But I'm wondering if we were to say, yes, that's an area that we really need to put on the list of things that are important for us, but maybe it's not top priority. If we take the department-wide policies that we have in place now and we implement that with the management plan and the conservation easement, and some of the comments you've heard tonight, primarily I think Jeremy's comment about lighting and also the issue of things after dark, would that be a place now that staff could at least on a temporary basis say, we kind of have enough guidelines and rules to say we really can't have weddings in the evening at this point? We don't have the rules. It's a little bit like we were talking about with OHVs earlier, I think. We just don't quite have the guidelines in place. And given the nature of the historic side of this, in the Red House area particularly, we probably would have some long-term limitations even if we had more information or had, developed a more detailed plan. But if we were to say something like that to you tonight, does that give you something to work with, and at the same time, hopefully not put too much more on your plate in terms of the short-term kinds of issues that and priorities that we have tried to set and that you are trying to implement?
Say something. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I think taking into account Jeremy's comments and a lot of the other board members, this is a very important place to the community. It has natural resource value, has cultural value. It's a place we want people to come and use and enjoy, and we don't want to say, no, we don't have staff, so we're not going to have anything here. But as a balance, we recognize we have limited staff, we have limited resources available. What can we do in the middle to meet, some of the community's needs and come up with, maybe we allow 4 events a year, and these are the thresholds, and based on our parking constraints, and there's a lot of things the site dictates how an event really can run. Those guidance and those direction on the after dark hours, those are all really good comments that I think will help staff sort of work on some parameters, and maybe we can come up with a policy and come back to you, and also do some best management research as well. It'd be really great to, look at the National Park Service and other historic sites and see how they manage these types of areas, and mitigate those issues, because I think there's probably a lot of other areas throughout the country that have some similar challenges, and we could really gain some experience and some ideas just at looking at some other agencies.
Donna?
In talking about this, the one thing that's popping into my head, especially in relation to the wedding, but for a lot of events, anytime you introduce alcohol, you're opening yourself up to all kinds of problems. I mean, and it seems to me every wedding I've been to with alcohol has gotten out of control, and I just keep picturing the best man swinging from the oak trees and somebody else swimming in the Mexican ditch. And, I would think if we kept the dawn to dusk, I really agree with Jeremy. Anything after dark, it just doesn't fit in with the area. I mean, this is open space, this is recreational area, not a wedding. I can see having the wedding there and them having the reception someplace else. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I would really like to see a no alcohol thing, just because it does introduce problems.
I agree with the no alcohol. I really think that's important for liability and just for the nature of open space. But I'm just saying, guys, I think I'm the only person here. We've already spent more time talking about this person's hypothetical wedding in September than I think.
No, it's a request.
No, but you know what I mean. They could break up next month. What I'm saying is, it's just, I just keep looking at the specific things that in the time I've been on this committee, we have wanted to do that we haven't been able to do. I think back on the time things that you guys did and how much of each of your time is spent on things. And I just think if we don't get done, it's like you got to eat your vegetables before you go on to the whatever. I just really would feel that these are all an important conversation, but we've just got stuff we've got to do. And if we add more and get back to us and look at, as you're looking at the national experience with similar properties, let's look at the national experience of similar properties with the existing workload, right? And no staff.
And where I was going with that is if we can get some guidance and some recommendations from other areas, so we're not reinventing the wheel and beating ourselves over the head. Should we have lights? Should we not? If there's other policies and procedures from other agencies throughout the nation that we can sort of steal their ideas and from their experiences and build it into a policy that works here, to me, that's just, I'm going for that time efficiency and that, looking at, other sort of best management practices. I'm not trying to
I totally
belabor it.
understood that, but what I'm saying is, that's all really an interesting exercise for you guys, and maybe if our work was done, it'd be a good thing to do. But then, who does it? I mean, you get these practices, the phone rings, you're dealing with some other, all that stuff takes time out of days that are brimming, as far as I can tell, already. It's not that, I know you guys could easily come up with, these parameters we're discussing, but then just day to day, as people call for Jeep things and all these events and all that, if we had an additional staff person that wanted to take this on and grants, I think that was I'd be just all for everything.
And that's by the end of the year, right? Okay. Other comments from the committee? Any public comment on this item? Don?
Just from what Laura's been saying, and last time we talked about a volunteer coordinator, it's sounding to me more and more, maybe what we need to be focusing on is do we need more staff and how are we going to get that staff? Instead of worrying about the nitpicking about a particular event. And it's sounding like we need at least a full-time staff member, maybe shared with Parks and Rec, maybe not, a volunteer coordinator, grants writer, special events coordinator. And how do we go about getting that staff person? And so then the community is not saying, well, we've got this open space, but you won't let us use it. And we don't want to be in that position either.
Now, we're looking for, by the end of the year, trying to fill a position for volunteer coordinator. Is that an accurate statement?
I think we had a discussion, a very robust discussion previously about the passion that you guys all have for the need for a volunteer coordinator and possibly sharing that with Parks. And we talked about trying to incorporate that in the next budget cycle. So that would, be submitted, early next year is when the budget process happens. So it's definitely something we can look at the budget, partially funded from open space and the other part funded, from the park side, and a request from the general fund.
Do we have a position that we're recruiting for now? Trails coordinator,
I
right?
hope so.
Yeah.
Still working on the job description.
Okay. You have a lot of passion up here, a lot of interest. We want to help. Sometimes we're a bit impatient, but I think we really are identifying a lot of areas where some technical help would be very valuable. So, any other comments from the committee? Final shot at public comment. Okay, this is a discussion item. Ann, question from you?
I do have a question. Hearing the comments tonight and thinking ahead for future staff, what is the future desire of this committee for events at Silver Saddle? Is it dawn to dusk and we know? I just would like for that clarification, because if there is a desire to have anything else, I can bring that back to this committee to ask for staff.
Well, speaking for myself to some degree, I'm not sure that would be the justification in my mind for staff. I'd like to see staff focused in other areas personally. But to try to answer your question, you listed a bunch of events that have happened this year. I'm not aware of any issues or negative aspects of those personally, that the events that have happened out there. You mentioned the one request for a wedding, and I think we talked about the nature of it, and I think the gist of what I've heard from the committee is we don't think that evenings or nights are appropriate right now, with at least where we are now. There's been a question about alcohol and the reception portion of it. And I think an indication that maybe a wedding during the day would be something that if somebody wanted to do that would not, I didn't hear anything tonight that would indicate the committee had a problem with that. Are there other things we can give to Ann for direction in terms of anything further? If you had a specific, off-the-wall question or somebody that came in and wanted to do something, I think you have a general sense that we're looking at the resource, we're concerned about the kinds of things that Nancy mentioned, but you could certainly bring it to the committee if you had somebody that was making a request that you felt was perhaps worthy of more discussion. The other thing you might do is you might let the sheriff know we think he probably should have outside security, just in case. Thanks.
One other question maybe I'll pose to this committee as well. With the current staff, and this year we had 7 events that did occur, do we just have a limit to events, first come, first serve, 10 events under current staffing levels?
Do those events, which staff, I mean, I realize they affect all staff to some degree, but which staff are most heavily impacted by those? Is it our ranger?
It depends on the event. New events take more time to meet with an applicant to talk about their type of event, their type of setup. So if it's a new event, it's probably more of my time. If it's a reoccurring event, just looking ahead, the Escape from Prison Hill, they've had about 10 events out there. They're pretty much self-sufficient. They know how to run their event. So really very little to no staff time. The sheriff's event, same thing. They've been there many years. The Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch, well, you know Nancy. She's pretty high maintenance. They are a partner with us. We really don't do much except make sure, for all these events, we make sure Silver Saddle's clean. So it is maintenance on our side just to prepare an event. It is up to the renter to make sure it's clean afterwards, and if not, then we do keep money from the deposit. The Eagle Valley Dog Tracking Club was new for us, so probably primarily my time right now, working with them through what their needs are. Jazz and Beyond, mine, and last year was John Costello, because he did help them set up and tear down all the tables and chairs that we had on site, and Carson River Cleanup, all staff.
Okay. Any thoughts from the committee in terms of further direction with regard to potentially the number of events that happen out there? We've got to.
And we can continue to check in too with the committee.
Pardon me?
We can continue to check in with the committee.
You know, we have a wonderful resource there that belongs to the community, and we're kind of stuck in a situation of being loved to death, potentially, and at the same time not being able to really devote or have the staff time unless it's at the expense of some other things that are pretty important. So it's finding a balance kind of an issue as I see it. So thoughts or ideas from the committee? Donna?
What I would say is, you're the ones that are there. You're the ones that have to deal with this. I would say, Ann, between you and Jennifer would be the ones to say, okay, we can do this many this year. And you may come to a point in the year and some of the events have taken so much time, or there's something else going on, you have to say, we have to suspend events for this period of time. I would rather leave it up to you, because you know how much time you've got and you know what you're doing.
As far as the number of events and the permit process, is there money out there for extra staff? Just asking a question. I mean, if I applied for a permit to have an event at Silver Saddle Ranch, would I also be providing money to the community to clean up and?
That's a really good question. Our budget approach, we're really going to be looking at hard. And another thing we're going to be doing this winter is looking at our fee schedule. The fees that we currently have at Silver Saddle were the fees that were charged by BLM when we took that over. They're very outdated, in my opinion, fees. They're not realistic for the services we're providing. And that's another thing we could do, is when we build that fee schedule and bring that to you, and we're going to be doing that throughout the whole park system as well. Those fees haven't been updated since the early 2000s. And it's really working with our budget staff to see if we can allocate maybe a percentage of the revenue coming in toward infrastructure preservation at these facilities, reducing impacts from special events and different things like that. So we need to not only covering the staff, but the infrastructure preservation is a huge issue right now. If you look at Mills Park, I get that this is not an apples to apples comparison, but every event in the community is at Mills Park, and the impacts from those events are really wearing on that facility. So we need to manage the schedule. We also need to have money to replace things as they get broken and damaged, and we just don't have the budget to do that. So we need to plan ahead and try to rework our fee structure and our budget to accommodate that.
And again, what I'm hearing, of course, that makes sense. It sounds great. So, you know, you're working on that, you get a call from the runaway bride. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't you think it should be like, first we do this, then we do this? So before we start talking about whether we're going to open up Silver Saddle or put lighting in, maybe we should figure out a fee schedule that'll inform those policy decisions.
You know, dovetailing on Lori's comment, Ann and I are working with SHPO to develop a stewardship program for Silver Saddle Ranch and how those resources are documented on a quarterly, annual basis and reporting back to SHPO. Potentially, maybe we should get that wrapped up before we move into events. That way, it's one thing that's scratched off the list. That way, too, there's a mechanism in place to address impacts should they happen from one of these events, just specifically speaking at Silver Saddle.
Okay, any other comments? Is it a fair summary to say that the committee feels that staff should seriously look at a staff person in the upcoming budget with regard to grant application and other management needs? So, okay, Ann, does that give you some direction to move forward?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, any final public comment on that item before Iris gets me? No? All right, moving right along. Item 3E. Nancy, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say one other thing, and as far as, you know, when the events occur and how many there are, I think, you know, your discretion is good. And it's not so much when they are as what they are and when they are together. You know, because we have a breeding season. And that's my biggest concern is I don't know what the dog trials are, but is that during, you know, done during the breeding season in an area where there's nesting birds or, you know, that kind of stuff is my biggest concern.
A lot of agencies have policies in place, like at Washoe Lake State Park. They close off the trail system during nesting season, and they have other operational things that we could probably apply here.
Yeah, so that's just my concern area.
Thank you. That was Nancy Santos, for the record. Any final comments? Okay, item 3E, discussion and possible recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to prohibit dispersed camping on properties managed by the Open Space Division, except as allowed per the terms of the BLM Carson City Conservation Easement, and to recommend including dispersed camping in the upcoming revisions to the Carson City Municipal Code 13.06. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope the committee is feeling challenged this evening. I've put some tough discussions in front of you tonight. As the staff report identifies that we have acquired our open space properties through various methods. Through fee title purchase, we have conservation easements, donation from private parties, and land conveyance from federal agencies. In the past, dispersed camping happened on some of the properties, perhaps without the knowledge of the camping parties of the land that they were on, and sometimes without the knowledge or approval from the landowner if it was a private property. For example, we often hear folks in Carson River Canyon, "I've always camped here." Well, did you always know it was private property? So many times folks just honestly did not know. In the areas that we acquired property from the federal agencies, on the west side of Carson City, we acquired property from the Forest Service. Their general policy is dispersed camping, primitive camping anywhere, for up to 14 days. Most of the properties that we acquired from the Forest Service are right at the interface. And what I did also in the staff report is identify some of the characteristics of these lands. So they may not necessarily even be suitable for camping. BLM lands, so Prison Hill, Silver Saddle, and Ambrose, and including East Silver Saddle by Sierra Vista Lane, specifically prohibits camping. So as we move forward and making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors and thinking about ordinances, camping is prohibited. We need a mechanism to enforce that as we move ahead. So moving on through the staff report for you, after we move past the properties that we know camping cannot occur, the next question for this committee is on the properties where it may be in question. The first question is, according to the purpose of open space as identified in 1306, do you believe that camping may occur on open space properties? If the committee says, no, it does not meet with the purpose and mission, vision of open space, then that question's answered. If it's unclear, then perhaps the next step is looking individually at the properties. How did we acquire the properties? And the deed restrictions of those properties then might prohibit camping as well. I did talk with Charlie Donahue with the State of Nevada Question 1 program on some of our Question 1 grants. And he did not have the funding agreements in front of him, and it was only a 10-minute conversation. But I did ask, do you think camping is allowed on these properties? And some of the questions that he threw back at me, was it included in your application? Did you identify that this would be a use? The answer is no. We never did identify it as a potential use. Sometimes we identified it more as a problem than a potential use. Some of the other questions he offered me is, again, he did not have the documents in front of him, but that funding mechanism was the Conservation and Resource Protection Grant Program. So does camping fall under the mission of their grant? It might require a State of Nevada attorney maybe to help us with that if we need to go down that road, but those are just some of the questions I'm posing to this committee. So what I did in your packet, identified each of the properties that are under our purview, whether camping and campfires have occurred in the past or present, if there's restrictions on the properties, and comments. So I don't necessarily want to go through each of those individually, but what I will do, I have 4 slides that I put together for you to identify some of the problems that happen on our properties. All these pictures have been taken within the last 2 years. The Ambrose Carson River Natural Area is located along Deer Run Road, extends all the way from residential area on the south by Pinion Hills Drive up to the residence near the Deer Run Road Bridge. This was a structure that was built. Someone was living along the river. Carson River Canyon, both these pictures are at the White Cliffs. It's kind of hard to see the picture on the left, but that is a sofa. We have talked about that illegal dumping occurs frequently in Carson River Canyon. In that top left picture, you can see the fire pit. Again, the fire pit's over the picture on the right as well, with a lot of trash and garbage. Still in Carson River Canyon, again, dumping, destruction, vandalism, and one of the most popular areas for people to camp in Carson River Canyon is along the river. It's a beautiful area. That's why the Open Space Advisory Committee and the Board of Supervisors agreed to purchase these properties for Carson City for our residents to have public lands. The river is a sensitive resource. It's right in the floodplain. What many folks don't know, it's also in the Carson River Mercury Superfund site. So if we want to designate camping, we probably need to spend time to do environmental surveys out here to look at mercury contents in the soil and see if they are under the recreational limit for the Environmental Protection Agency. And then up by the waterfall area, we also have camping that occurs up there. These are just a few of their areas that I wanted to show the committee tonight. Also in your packet, I did include some of the language in our grant agreements, as well as the considerations of camping, of dispersed camping. It may be potential that this committee might say, Carson River Canyon, we want developed sites So that might be a response if we do want to allow camping. So we direct people where to go, that they have designated campfire rings, and we can manage the vegetation and the soil resources. But your staff report does identify some of the considerations, such as the compatibility and visibility with other recreational uses, emergency or fire response, increased threats of catastrophic fire. Rich and I have put out fires ourselves in Carson River Canyon. People have left fires burning. And so fortunately, we do keep water in our vehicle and a shovel. Lack of sanitation facilities results in dispersed trash and waste and potential health hazards for visitors and staff. Toilet paper in the shrubs is frequent. Soil and water impacts from compaction or loss of vegetation. Vegetation impacts through vehicle access, parking encroachment, campsite development use, and collection of firewood. We have a couple trees in Carson River Canyon that over time people are burning or trying to chop down. So we're losing some of our vegetation. Visual impacts may detract from natural beauty of the area, wildlife habitat, even in the rock outcrops, and just the increased staff responsibility to clean fire pits and remove trash. One of the questions that we've had on other topics is what happens around open space properties? Who are the other landowners? What is their management? We have one property up in the upper Ash Canyon in which our neighbors are the U.S. Forest Service and State Parks. State Parks does have a developed campground area. People need to park their car and walk in, but they do have developed sites with picnic tables and fire rings. The Forest Service and BLM on all their lands do allow camping for up to 14 days in one place. And around our area, there are several campgrounds at Washoe Lake State Park, Galena Creek, and Dayton State Park as well. So it is a recreation opportunity. We love people to get outside and enjoy, but is this an activity that is appropriate on open space properties?
And why did you, this has been an issue for as long as you worked for open space, right?
Correct.
Why did you put it on this agenda? Is there something that just happened?
It's time, and as we talk about ordinances, I'd like our discussion with ordinances to try to be as complete as possible. And we know on some of our properties, camping is already prohibited. So I would like to take that next step forward and include it.
So what you're suggesting is the ordinances that have not been, it's been, as we all, know that we've discussed ordinances, we have had specific activities that we have agreed need to be prohibited on open space land. I think it's been well over a year since we agreed on that. Nothing has been drafted. Now we have a DA. The DA has hired somebody, I guess, who's going to be doing a bunch of ordinances, who's familiar with bill drafting. So we're still not at it. You're trying to get this in so this contract attorney can incorporate this issue into the ordinances that we agreed on. I think it's been a year and a half, right?
Correct.
With that being said, is there any reason to go to the Board of Supervisors? Are we going to take a whole package of ordinances to them when the time comes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that would be the plan.
So going to the board on this particular item would only occur after we had the package together, and so we wouldn't be further delaying it by a step through the board.
So wouldn't really the issue be whether or not this committee now is going to vote to preclude dispersed camping as an additional one of those things that we've previously agreed should be incorporated in to draft amendments to the ordinances that we would then take as a package to the supervisors? That's really the action item, correct?
There's a couple action items. First, I would like this committee to decide, is camping appropriate for open space properties?
That's a huge, was this in the considered in the management plan? I mean, that's a huge issue.
Yes.
Okay, and what was the decision then?
Did I include that? It did say that we needed to go back and have that discussion. So it was unresolved, because, just like Carson River Canyon, some of these are very complex subjects.
I'd like to take this point and ask for any public comment on this issue. Camping on open space is obviously an important element, a question, a real concern in many respects. And so do we have any public comment at this point?
Robin Orloff, for the record. I use open space, east side, west side, all over. I have real reservations about any kind of camping in our areas. I think we're real fire prone. I think we've seen recent fires. Who knows what's caused them, I guess. You know, in some cases, it could be someone out there making a fire. I think our whole city and environment around us is at risk. Not to mention a lot of the garbage I see that's from dispersed camping that's going on already. So I would definitely be not in favor of it.
Thank you, Robin. Yes.
I'm Joe Foster, and I've hiked on the Carson River, and I've seen people camping down there. And I think that in the long run, let's say 20 years from now, I think that having these designated campsites that, Ann, you mentioned that the Forest Service has, I think that might be appropriate, but just this dispersed camping where people just pitch their tents, whatever, I would agree with the lady that just spoke that, you know, if you're going to go out there hiking, you don't want to run into somebody who's camping there. And I like camping, but I really think that I do not like the idea that people can just pitch a tent somewhere and use the resources without being careful about the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment. Nancy.
Just as a community member. I agree. I don't agree. I don't like the idea of dispersed camping at all, especially in the riparian zones. I'm also a wildlife biologist, so I look at things from a different perspective. But so there's some open space areas that are appropriate for designated campgrounds. I don't know. But as far as riparian zones, I would definitely say no, and that would include the Carson River corridor and other areas like that. So.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Jennifer, does Parks have any camping other than incidental to, I guess, some of the events, or how do you handle it from a Parks perspective?
There are some provisions in the parks codes about camping, it being prohibited. We do allow it associated with events, typically like at Mills Park, if a vendor needs to stay with their equipment and their items to secure it, if it's, say, a 4-long-day event, we'll provide areas for them to park and be able to camp overnight in an RV or something like that. I want to caution you, the wording that we come forward with, however you choose to move forward, we don't want to paint ourselves in a corner, so should we ever have a campground or a designated camping area, that we allow ourselves to have that opportunity in the future.
But that would not be dispersed camping by definition.
It wouldn't be, but.
So the way this
yeah.
is written would prohibit, I mean, it seems to me, because I completely agree with you. I mean, if we're all just chipping in our, personal opinions, which respectfully, I'm not really sure this is really the way ideally something this significant should be brought to bear. It seems to me that it's here now because maybe in my lifetime we're going to be actually getting these ordinances done. But I do believe that camping is an extremely important experience for families. I agree totally that dispersed camping now probably should be included in the ordinances. And I think the way that Ann has presented this, we're leaving our, and I'd love to see a conversation, once we get our homework done and once we get our, punch list done of all this other stuff, I'd love to see us take on in coming years, but not 20 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, undertaking a part of the resource that's environmentally appropriate and wouldn't be a fire hazard, so that families can come here and experience camping with, as family or group units. But I have if really just kind of, and I'm going to be quiet, and sir, I was late because I flew in for this meeting. That's why I was 5 minutes late. But in any event.
Drive faster.
Yeah. I have no problem, and if really what we're talking about is let's incorporate this dispersed camping prohibition for all open space into the ordinances that hopefully will be drafted, and then make it very clear, I think that we share the concerns expressed tonight about just free camp. I mean, it's basically, what we all see. It makes us uncomfortable for the environment and for safety, and just because sometimes it's gross. Let's stop it, but let's take a look. I think it's like we're talking about with the Jeeps and we're talking about with Silver Saddle. I think I would love to see in the future us to have, designated camping. But let's get this done. Let's get the ordinances done. This dovetails with signage in my mind. I mean, how do people know? It dovetails with the website, it dovetails with signage and ordinances. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, and thank you for trying to be here on time.
I have a legal question. Can we impeach the chair?
I like him.
Yes, Alan.
I'd like to follow up on the not paint ourselves in a corner. And the reason I'm going there is that I can envision some pieces of property that are in the Carson Range that are entirely surrounded by Forest Service land. And how you would, the signage, the enforcement, and all of those issues, I think, are problematic. And so, in terms of, I think, the properties we're talking about here, I certainly understand you would want to perhaps prohibit dispersed camping, but I think we should be careful to not necessarily paint ourselves in that corner for anything we would ever acquire.
You might want to consider unless in designated areas or some other language, so as the committee identifies or acquires additional land in addition to what we have now, we might be able to designate areas that would be allowable for camping. So some sort of caveat that would provide that opportunity as we move forward, but, prohibit the dispersion of all that camping.
But I think that's why dispersed is such a great word. I don't know who came up with it, but I mean, if it's in a designated area, it's not dispersed. Even if it's
for the
scattered.
future, but the areas that he's talking about now, where it's surrounded by Forest Service and camping is allowed, maybe that ends up being a designated area.
Well, maybe it does
Where
in the
we
future.
allow.
But if I'm camping in Forest Service land, I'm getting a permit. I know, I mean, we don't even have that we don't have that.
This, once again, goes back to a staffing issue, too. We do not have the staff to monitor designated camping areas. We barely got a ranger now to deal with the dispersed camping, and he's probably overworked at this point. And as far as I know, I think we only really have one piece that is totally surrounded by Forest Service land that would be an issue, and that's the one on top of the hill, right?
We have Horace Creek fee title purchase and Hutchinson, which are surrounded by Forest Service, and Kings Canyon. And then in Ash Canyon, we have the Wilson acquisition, which is surrounded by Forest Service
That's right, I
and state
forgot about
parks.
Wilson. But, I mean, yes, I would like to see someday maybe some designated camping, especially pack-in type stuff, especially if we ever get a trail that's been envisioned along the entire Carson River. But at this point, we don't have the staff, and it's too dangerous with the fire restrictions, and somebody who has spent her time picking toilet paper and condoms out of the brush, I want to see it stopped entirely, all dispersed camping. And someday in the future, we can revisit it and talk about designated camping sites.
That leads to another good point, and we talk about our ranger staff and enforcement. Having something in the ordinances, our rangers do have citation authority from the Board of Supervisors. So if we have something in the code, we can give him another tool to be able to enforce that and hopefully reduce that dispersed camping.
Is it fair to summarize that our collective recommendation as a committee is that dispersed camping be prohibited in the proposed ordinances, which we will again have a public hearing about, but that we're sending that direction to staff that that's what we would like to see, with recognizing the discussion, and obviously if we had any formal camping, it would become parks, and open space wouldn't be responsible for it. Is that
That's what I see.
okay? Do we need a motion to that effect? Ira says yes, we need a motion.
I'll try. I move that in addition to the prior amendments to the ordinances that were approved by this committee, we add the prohibition against dispersed camping for open space land. All open space land.
We have a motion with the word dispersed in it. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any public comment? Any questions, comments from the committee?
I just had a question well, maybe Ann could answer it, but maybe anybody could. Does anybody know of the dispersed, kind of their semi-permanent spots now, the people that continue to go? Does anybody know the number of dispersed or of a single dispersed camping spot that is west of the Yerington Smelter, the place where people use for the target shooting?
Oh, yeah.
Because my point
River
is,
Canyon, there's lots of them.
okay, my point is that one consideration that didn't actually come up was that eventually, hopefully, the train's going to move down there. So if we have designated camping spots, we should be cognizant of where those locations might be, because if we have designated camping spots east of the Yerington Smelter where they're going to have the balloon track and bring that's going to prohibit access in the first place for people to travel down there.
Well, that would prohibit motorized access, but it wouldn't prohibit backpacking access. So, and I would say that would be something that we would discuss when the time comes and we start looking at designated sites, because that whole area is so trashed now that I think it needs to heal before we would even consider any designated sites.
I agree.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, does that give you what you need direction-wise?
Thank you, and I watched our deputy district attorney take notes as well.
Great. Okay, next item, 3F, possible action to add a non-voting seat for a high school student intern of the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Thank you. This item is on the agenda per their request of Vice Chair Welch. And some of you may be familiar with the program at the high school that all seniors need to complete a class project. And I did some research. I couldn't remember where it was, but I thought the Parks and Rec Commission or some other branch of city government had a student intern. I remember seeing it somewhere at some point. Maybe it was the master plans, but I couldn't find it for this agenda item to give you the background. But with that said, Member Welch talked with another lady. I don't know if she's a teacher or a friend, parent of Carson High School, regarding an opportunity for a senior to join us. And we didn't get too much into conversation on this, but some of the ideas, we could accept applications. They would go through an interview process similar to the committee members up here, and then have a mentor on the committee and join us for their senior project. I'll let Member Welch, Vice Chair Welch, add more to that.
Yes, I, for some reason, maybe had a dream that, in fact, Carson City allowed that, and we hadn't ever done it for any of the committees. But it struck me as a good way to get some youth perspective, as well as provide an opportunity for a student. I think it looked great on a college application, frankly, to, they've been involved in government. And so by being non-voting, it doesn't affect quorum issues or voting and having, a tie or those sorts of things. But and I think that, if you include something like that, that person might take on some real volunteer activities in addition to just coming to some meetings. So that was the thought.
Okay, any questions of the committee? Yes, Laura.
I think it's a great idea. Again, we got to get our homework done. If this is something, when you're talking about applications and all that, I just worry about staff time. Is this something, I mean, maybe we could have one of your little groups do? This seems like something that we don't need to take your time to. And if the committee agrees that it's a great idea, maybe we could undertake this.
Let me ask you a question, Alan, just in general. This is potentially a senior project? And
It potentially wouldn't have to be. I think that would be up, whoever applies and is accepted, I think that would be their decision. If they want to do something else for a senior project, I don't think that that's for us to impose that. That's my feeling.
Okay, because in thinking about a senior project, it's a time-limited kind of thing, and it would seem to me that maybe if we wanted to have a student representative as an ad hoc member, we might want to look at it more for an annual appointment or something like that where they would have some continuity. We don't meet that often, and for them to get the real experience, it might be maybe a little different format, but the concept could be similar. Any other comments, thoughts from the committee? Jeremy?
This might be getting into the weeds before necessary, but would there be an expectation for some sort of output or presentation from this senior at the end of their appointment?
I think you're ahead of the game. Any other thoughts or comments? Do we want to consider this? We've got, Alan's suggestion. We've got Laura's concern about if we make this into, you look at what the Board of Supervisors has to go through to appoint a member of this committee. We certainly don't want to put staff through that. What are our collective thoughts?
I agree with Laura. I think this is something we should take on and write up. I don't think we need to put a lot of effort into it, but I would recommend, rather than ours timeframes are January to January, I think if we do a student, it should be June to June. Then you would be able to get a kid coming on board in June, going through the summer, because if they graduate in June, we'll lose them for the rest of the year. We'll only have a 6-month member. But I think, if we could put together a few, if each one of us brought a question to the application and have a quick meeting, I think we could come to an agreement on that, and then contact those at the school. I'm sure the new mountain biking racing group and the environmental group at the school would be the two, and maybe even the civics teacher, those three, and see if they've got students that are interested. Have we really approached them to find out if there's an interest?
Okay, I think it would seem like it would make sense to have maybe the school or the school plus maybe some of the clubs or somebody perhaps accept nominations or get applicants. We could have, as Laura suggested, one of our committees of a couple people, working groups of a couple people, interview those folks. We could have them come to this meeting, to our meeting, and interview all of them as a group. I guess what are people's thoughts in terms of selecting somebody? I do like the idea of maybe a June to June, so that somebody could perhaps have a summer meeting to get their feet on the ground and then be with us through the balance of the school year as a member.
Why don't we just figure out who on this committee might be interested in working on this as this, whatever you call it, so we are were cool, a subcommittee, and then come back at the next time with proposed questions. Somebody contacts the high school. I don't know if it'd be Michelle Lewis, I don't know who there does these kinds of things, to see if they think it's a good idea, and then we'll have something more concrete to present and just get it done.
Alan, do you want to take the lead in that? Is that?
Sure, I'm glad to take the lead. If there's somebody else, one or two other people want to help, I would be more than welcome, or very much like that to happen. So Laura, that'd be great.
Are you looking for just input or sets of questions or actually involvement in the interview process?
At this point, it's to come up with a concrete proposal for the position, and probably doing a little bit of work interacting with the high school to help identify who we would go to, so we get some good students, applicants.
So a working group of Laura and Alan to start with. Iris, will you make sure that we can do this legally? Yes. Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion on that particular item? Do we need a motion? All right. And is there any public comment? Closing that one out. Yes.
Well, I'm Joe Foster. I hadn't thought about this until just now, but I'm retired from a small four-year liberal arts college in Iowa. And so being on a lot of faculty committees, we often had undergraduate students in our committees, and they were often some of the most prepared people for the meeting. So I highly encourage getting these younger people involved, because I was very impressed with the students I worked with.
Mr. Chairman, if they're going to make us look bad, do we want to reconsider?
Yeah, they'd probably be on time, too. Okay, we're moving right along. Next item, for possible action, recommend to the Board of Supervisors submittal of a grant application to the Community Forest and Open Space Conservation Program for fee title acquisition of 20 acres, APN 007051-81, located along Highway 50 and owned by W. Michael Fagan. Now, this is clearly deja vu.
Yeah.
So let's go through it quickly and make sure that we understand the differences from before, and then the committee can ask any questions they have. Ann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it is deja vu. In the past, staff has brought a similar proposal to this committee to acquire Michael Fagan's property, 20 acres on Highway 50. In the past, we have talked about applying to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and we have talked about a possible trade with another property in Carson City. An update on that second part is a trade is not possible. We've exhausted our options, and so we are just looking ahead for grants. We can still plan on submitting a grant to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. However, our department has 2 other applications as well. So we might be competing internally with ourselves. And so this is just another possible option, putting everything out there to get any additional funding for us to bridge the gap and to complete this acquisition with Michael Fagan.
Thank you, Ann. Are there questions from the committee? Laura?
What other grant applications would we be competing with?
Roscold Park for a new playground, and the disc golf course up on Flint Drive.
Any other committee comment, questions? Public comment? Okay, the motion is to consider authorizing or requesting staff to move forward through the board to approve another grant application. We don't think that their approval for us to go forward with a grant is broad enough to allow us to just move with this one?
No, the last approval did identify the Land and Water Conservation, or it will, because we're taking all 3 proposals to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. So at the same time, you can get authorization for moving with this other one, should we approve it tonight?
We will ask for authorization. Whether they approve it is up to the board.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we have recommended action. Do we have a motion?
I'll do it. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors submittal of a grant application to the Community Forest and Open Space Conservation Program for fee title acquisition of 20 acres APN 007-05181, located along Highway 50 and owned by W. Michael Fagan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Did you guys want to do public comment?
Sure, as soon as I second, as soon as I get a second.
Okay.
Thanks. Do we have a second so we can?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. On the comment, Laura, did you have a comment?
I just have a question. I remember the presentation, I remember the prior motion, and now that we're here, I don't think I asked this before. I think I know where the piece is. Does he have any access?
It's right adjacent to Highway 50.
Right, but that doesn't mean it has access.
I would probably need to double check
I
with
think
PennDOT.
that's a really important question. Having been working for the last 3 years for NDOT, I realize that just because it's adjacent, that Highway 50 in that location is controlled access. And if it's controlled access and it doesn't have access, I don't know how the appraisal, I never saw it. But I think it would be very important to check because obviously Mr. Fagan has been great, but obviously this is money that we're going to be competing with other worthy things for. And, you know, if it can't be developed, it's one thing. And I just really, I'm sorry I didn't think of this before, but I actually thought about it. I did think about it once and it went away, but as I was driving up, I don't see really, I mean, physical access I think would be very hard to engineer, but legal access, you have to go through a whole permitting process, and if they acquired access when they put in Highway 50, then you don't have a right.
Okay, we will note that, and that's something that staff can check. Is there any other public comment?
I think that would be something that the appraiser would consider review and identify if there's legal access or not, and obviously it would change the value of the property at the time of appraisal.
Who's your appraiser?
We haven't hired anyone.
Okay, and I could probably find out too. If you want me to find out from NDOT if access has been acquired from that piece, I probably could do that pretty easily. Just follow up with me.
Typically what we would do, we get awarded the grant, we do the appraisal, we go through the process. So, yeah, we
Right,
haven't
but
gotten that far yet. But that would really
if
help
you
with us
just-
planning.
It's something I could find out probably within days, and maybe that would make a difference whether or not we wanted, do we pay for that appraisal?
Yes, we would.
Yeah, it might make a difference.
What you might do is ask the realtor for any information that she could provide to Laura to help in that background look.
It's just a public
Thank
record
you.
NDOT has. I'll get it.
And of course, you can engineer any access, so that wouldn't be a problem. All right. I think we finished with the public comment. Do we have, all right, we have a motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Me, nay.
One, Laura. Okay. The next item is the update on our working groups. Ann, do you want to do that? Do you want to have the groups themselves talk, or how do you propose to, or do you want to give us a summary of where things are from your perspective?
I will open up the item and add that I have added a single-person working group with Jeremy. When Jeremy joined us, and especially with his background in cultural resources, one of the requirements that I have with the programmatic agreement from the land conveyance is to develop a stewardship program for our cultural resources. And again, because of staff time and so many other tasks, it's been delayed. having Jeremy on board, someone who has knowledge and experience and knows the people in the State Historic Preservation Office, I asked if he would be willing to help with that task. And Jeremy, I think we've been to 1 or 2 meetings so far with the State Historic Preservation Office. So that single-person working group has begun. And I will let the other groups provide their other updates.
Thank you, and thank you, Jeremy. Nice to see you off to a fast start.
It's the only way I fly.
Yep, all right. We have 3 groups. Alan, and you guys were a group. Do you want to talk about what you guys have, Donna or Alan?
I think Donna should take the lead.
All right, just.
Can you bring up the?
I don't know if I can, Dawn. I forgot to save it to my external.
It's in our documents. Just bring up the pages that are in our documents for the meeting. That's good enough. Because I don't, did the updates and changes you made, did they share to me? Because I have not had a chance to go back and look at it.
Maybe, Mr. Chair, if you'll start with another working group and I'll bring up the PowerPoint.
Yes, we can do that. Laura, do you want to amplify anything on anything you've said earlier? Or
I get the hint. The ordinances, I'll tell you, and, you know, I think the world truly of our deputy district attorney and our district attorney, but apparently what's happened is there's been some turnover, so that now they are hiring for this and a whole bunch of other issues, somebody, and we're just waiting for him to get on. I'm available to meet. We're going to add the dispersed camping and get this done.
Jennifer, do you have any update on timing for that position that is being considered in the DA's office, and how we become the first priority for his workload?
I'll answer that.
Thanks, Iris.
So he actually starts tomorrow morning, and his name is Scott. So we've already contracted with somebody. He is going to be doing a number of projects, and ordinance revisions are going to be one of his projects. So we're very excited that he is coming on board, and that's all I have right now.
Can we, and that's my understanding, he's working on Clear Creek. I mean, I keep hearing, the problem is, it's like, oh, Scott's going to be working on this. I mean, he's going to be doing a lot of things, and they're going to be other ordinances than our little ordinances. So I think, quite frankly, you guys, I mean, we'll try to meet with him as soon as possible, but I think we're going to be down the food chain here. I don't think it's going to be immediate. Fair enough?
That's fair, except for I do know that Adriana plans to discuss this specific ordinance issue with him tomorrow morning. So it is high priority. We realize that it's taken a long time, and somehow it's kind of gone under the radar, so we're going to hope to get that started really quickly.
Thank you, Iris, and please feel free to communicate our interest in an early start. Okay, anything to add? All right. Jerry, do you want to talk a little bit about signage?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. I don't have the information, all the information, as Margie's not here, so I'll just do my part of the discussion. We met with Bruce, and we decided that what we needed to do was define the areas that needed our attention immediately, and then to determine what problems each specific area was having in order of importance to the environment or desecration of the land or whatever. So I got together with Ann, and we put together a list of the 4 areas, and I went out to each area and took some photos and kind of discovered that our signage really is not very good. It's either in the wrong place, it has way too much wordage on it, or it's not visible from the access roads. So as far as, I don't really know where to go on, to go with this, except for to try and determine what the wordage should be. And then Margie, as far as I know, is working on an FRQ, request quote for somebody to actually put the signage together, but until we decide, and I don't know if we're doing this as a group or is this a working group to decide what's going to actually go on the signs. I mean, what the font is or how it's protected from the elements, I don't think is important until we decide what should be on the signs and where they need to go. So if I can get some kind of a direction here on what you'd like me to do as an individual, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, let me suggest something from my perspective and see what the committee thinks. My sense, Jerry, would be that if the two of you and Margie, could come up with some recommendations for wording, we're talking about the potential for, does this one have any overlap with park signage, or are we more or less independent here?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair. In fact, I took this item to the Parks and Recreation Commission earlier this month, and so we do have members that offered to help with the website and the signage. They'll review their ordinances, but I don't think that needs to be a partnership necessarily with open space, but we did task them with that as well.
Would it be appropriate to have the members of the Parks and Rec Committee and the members of our committee work together to bring some draft language and, fill in some of the blanks? I hate to see this committee try to hash out wording on signage when we can look at a recommended draft and tweak it if we think we need to, but to move it forward, I think it would be better done by the work group.
Some joint review, so the request for qualifications is what Member Masad was talking about. We need to hire a consultant to help us with that graphic piece, the font, the design, so we have a continuous or a consistent look throughout parks, open space, and trails. We need one type of signage, because right now it's a sea of signage. When you go out to Lake Riverview Park, there's 40 signs. I don't want to read any of them when I go there. There's so many signs. So I think we recognize we have that problem, but we need to figure out how we can combine all that and work with something that fits within our natural environment. It also educates people, and then we need to do a request for, qualifications to get someone on board and help us with that piece. In your packet, you'll see some samples that Ann provided about other efforts that they did in Lake Tahoe and Washoe County and other areas to kind of help go in that direction. And we can benefit from those agencies' efforts as well. But hiring that third party will really help. So what we can do is provide requests for qualification samples for the review committee. The Parks Commission wants to be involved as well. I think for signage, we really need a joint effort for that.
Great. But what Jerry was talking about is, that makes total sense. I agree with you about Riverview Park. But do we, it's two points. What do we put on the signs, which is a bigger issue, and do we work with parks to figure out what we put on the signs in open space? Are you envisioning the signs like, trailhead, careful rock slide, or the totals and highlights of the ordinances? What are these signs going to say? Is it going to say no fireworks, no camping, or is it just going to say, go this way, pretty view? I don't even know if we've decided that.
I think part of it would be the development of a department-wide sign policy, and we might have categories, open space, parks, things like that, where we have trailheads. So we'd have a graphic design that would go throughout, but the rules are going to change. What you have, in parks is going to be different than what you're going to allow for open space. But you want consistent signage. So we identify maybe on the way to our open space areas, like you see BLM and you see just those big portal signs of entryways, pack it in, pack it out. Maybe there's certain guidance and language in trailheads, and we decide on all trailheads, this is the wording we're going to have.
So is this something you're doing, or Jerry and, the subcommittee's doing? Because it kind of seems, which is fine, but,
Sure.
I actually thought that what we were going to do is take that off, not who's doing the signs and the fonts and all that, but take the issue of what kinds of things need to be communicated in open space to the public in a succinct way. Is that something we're doing, or are you guys going to do it so it's consistent with whatever you're?
It's probably both, but when we met with Member Masad, we talked about having the subcommittee develop the RFQ, the request for qualification, so staff wouldn't have to do that. We would provide samples and have you guys put that together. You would also interview and help select that person. So it'd be one less thing that the staff would have to do. So that would be sort of the format and the graphic piece. The other part is Member Masad identified certain areas where he felt there were real problems, and we talked about that. And looking at those areas, where do we need signage? What are the issues out there? And coming up with sort of an intermediate option on how to address those issues until we have a sign policy and everything in place. If you
So-
one other direction, I mean, we're open to that.
Can we take advantage then of the work that Jerry and Margie have done, potentially marrying that to the input from a couple representatives from Parks and Rec, to look at the locations that they think signage should be considered, look at maybe the kinds of signs or the kinds of messages, and have some committee-specific inputs to the graphics people who would be looking at the fonts and the sizes and the consistency across the community. But is there a way we can plug in our working group to provide some inputs to be then melded in with the work that the selection of the consultant would carry forward?
I think yes to all of that. And development of a sign policy in conjunction with the Parks Commission, I think would be a great direction. And that would help drive what that consultant would do. It talks about where signs are okay, where they're not, about policies for the department, so it guides that consultant. We can provide samples. We already have samples from other agencies, so it would be really easy to create that policy. And it would provide those guidelines in that direction.
Because it would seem to me that the more we can focus this with our working group, the quicker the consultant can do the work and the less involved and less expensive, hopefully, it would be. For open space, we have, in my mind, we have simpler needs maybe than some of the things we saw in the examples, but it gives us some things to think about. One of my reactions was on the Tahoe Trail is, don't make things that are going to become souvenirs for somebody to take off. But that's just an aside.
Mr. Chair, and I have talked with Margie as well, and what her and Member Masad were both doing, we're contributing into this direction, and Margie is willing to take the lead on the RFQ, because I do believe we have signs out there. They're not great signs, but signs aren't cheap. And so why spend money to make another sign until we have better signs?
I might add, how do we know how many signs we need? See, that's the thing, that everybody's willing to go ahead and design the font and design. We don't even know how many we need or where we're going to put them. And I think that's first off, before we can budget anything, don't we need to know what we're budgeting for? So I would like to see, whether it's me or whomever, actually come up with a plan of where we're going to place these signs, and then we can figure out what's going to be on them, and then we can decide who's going to build them. So I think we're at step A, and we're talking about D, E, and F. So that's just my opinion.
Well, I would see that steps A, B, and C are things that the working group could be doing. We wouldn't want you to touch font sizes, but
Not my area.
But we certainly, the inputs of, you're going to be users and observers of what's going on out there, and I think that would be really valuable. We might want to have a consultant who says, typically you'd have this or this or this as a way to maybe bounce around ideas, but I would think having specific suggestions from the working group would be very helpful.
Well, I think we're there. Okay, I went up and looked at the areas. I've defined and talked to Ann and talked to Jennifer about what the signs actually should. It should not be no, 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 but it should be something like that. But we've actually determined the areas, and I did some legwork and looked at the different places that I think the signage should go. But is it my decision? Is it our decision? Is it me and Margie's decision? Is it Ann's decision? Whose decision is it to actually decide on placement, and then we can decide on content?
I guess my response would be, if you and Margie can take the information you come up with and put it into some sort of a format, I think the staff and the committee should probably look at that. But I would think that would be an important step to move forward with while we're trying to get a consultant in place, and so that we can take advantage of what you guys have done and any thoughts and ideas you have.
Well, in reality, I already took pictures and talked about placement with the pictures I took at Ann's office. I mean, we went down, I showed her, listen, here's just to the north end of Prison Hill, there are 5 or 6 different entries, okay, where people can actually drive vehicles. And one of the entries actually says no motorized vehicles, and it's on a road. So, I mean, the signage is confusing at best and incomplete as well. So I think we have most of that in place. And then, so what would be the next step would be, I guess, would be to talk to a consultant about the actual wordage, whoever that is. So maybe that request for whatever that's called, we should just move ahead with, I guess. Is there money for that? I don't know. I think we're ready for that.
No, we have money budgeted that can go to consulting within guidelines, but I would say you should move forward, you and Margie move forward with that with staff. And staff will work with you to add what we need from Parks and Rec. Is that fair?
Yeah, and if we need to assist you with getting you some maps so you can identify some, potential signage locations or things that could assist you in your efforts out in the field, we're happy to do that. Okay, so if you were, I just want to make sure you have what you need.
Thanks. I lead walks and hikes on all of the open space land, and my group can give you very specifics as to where we need signs, because I know where I'm going, but anybody else would not know. But I've been doing it long enough that I know where we need signs. But I also wanted to let you know, and I cannot think of his name now. He's now the president of, used to be Podunk's biggest little stewardship, something or other. They changed their name. It's even worse than Podunk's. But anyway, he told me that they went around and put American flag stickers on their signs, and all of a sudden, they didn't get shot up.
BLM and the Forest Service started doing that on all their Carsonites because people show, for the most part, greater respect for the American flag. So a lot of different agencies have put that, and they make them for the Carsonite signs, like when you're out on the trails.
And they're cheap. You can get a roll of those stickers for $2 or something.
That's
Donna, when you're taking your fellow community out for hikes, if somebody has a Garmin and you happen to GPS these locations of optimal sign location, have them send the files to me, and I'd be very happy to put together a map for Jerry.
Jeremy, if you could spend 10 minutes with me and help me figure out how to use my Garmin, I would do that in a heartbeat.
No problem.
I tried to learn that thing, and I'm getting better, but I need some more help. Yes, that's what we could do, because...
Donna, your mic.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
That's what we could do, because we're out there every Tuesday night. And I got another group that's going out Thursdays, and then, then there's the group Tuesday morning, and then the monthly hike.
I had a thought on the just the term RFQ. In my experience with dealing with a request for qualifications, it generally, for the recipients of that information, you then have to turn around, evaluate who's qualified, and then you have to write an RFP. And then those people that you say the 3 top people are the highest qualified, you then have to do more work and say, okay, now write us a proposal of how you're going to address our problem. And so if what I'm hearing is correct, is that the ducks need to get into a row first about content and location, skip the RFQ and go straight to an RFP. That way it saves you guys some time. If what I'm hearing is correct, you don't want to hear additional ideas. If the content and the location are what's important, and you just need a consultant to then make the signage, then you might save yourself a step by skipping the RFQ.
Since we're looking for professional services, specifically for design services, we can't do an RFP because it's specifically outlined in NRS. So we do have to go based on qualifications, and then we'll negotiate with the ones that we're top, and we'll let them know out front, this is our budget in the RFQ. So they're not going to put in a proposal if they're not going to work within our guidelines. So
Gotcha.
we can work that, but we have to work within the guidelines of NRS.
Okay, understood.
But I get where you're going with that.
And it's you that want that, because, I mean, it seems to me, like, I think there are two parts to this. What Jerry said about where we're going to put the signs, and he's done a lot of work, and probably if you can get some mapping and get the input from people that may be walking someplace you didn't see.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean,
Ton of them.
that's a great thing, and maybe we could do that with the community that uses open space. And then I think we decide kind of what goes on the signs. And it seems to me like we're getting hung up on is this because you want it to be the same as parks, that it has to be designed a certain way?
I just want a consistent look throughout our entire, people aren't going to know if it's parks or open space or whatever, and most people don't even care who owns the property, but we need to just provide a consistent look, so they're not having to look for different signage, and they'll get to know and be familiar with as they go to all of our facilities.
But the
Just a
ordinances
consistent
are
look.
different. If we're going to get into what's
Well,
prohibited.
and we'll cite the appropriate ordinances on the sign location.
And my idea is different than that even. As far as, I don't think that ordinances, the number of the ordinance really means anything to anybody. I think what we're trying to do is protect whatever the four things are that we're trying to protect against, is that's what needs to go on the signs. And yes, to say there's an ordinance that backs them up is one thing, but I think it's more, please don't do this, however that's worded. You know, please stay on the roads. Please only drive X amount of miles an hour. Please, respect the people walking. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, and Ann gave me a list of the places, and I only took the top 4 because I didn't I mean, there's a lot of areas that don't have any problems. So there's no point in us really worrying about signage at this point, I would think, unless we have more money than we need to blow off. But I would think to start with the number 1 problem area and then move down the list in a some kind of a logical way. And again, I think it's just about 3 or 4 things. I don't think it's about 20 things, because people don't read 20 things. So that's just my idea.
Are you envisioning it saying open space? So you want the same look, but it'll look the same, and some will say open space and some will say parks?
I think it'll say Carson City at minimum.
So do you want to just do
I want to
this?
educate people on who the property owner is.
Right, but there
the
is
same time?
there is a difference between parks and open space.
There is.
You're in charge of both, but they're 2 different things.
Correct.
And they're different, and I couldn't agree more. Nobody wants a municipal code citation, and you want to get to the hot issue on the few things that we're going to really prohibit that are a problem. But it's different with parks and open space.
It is, and I completely agree with him. Having too many words and too much to read,
Right, but
people
this
are going to blow right by it.
This is what, you see, I'm hearing it's morphing, okay? Like everything seems to morph. I'm hearing we had a subcommittee here for open space signage. Now I'm hearing you've talked to people with parks, and you have maybe a subcommittee there, right, with people with parks that are actually going to be doing their signage.
This committee recommended reaching out to the Park Commission as well, and
Yeah,
maybe
we're
having
just
some
hearing
joint
that.
efforts.
We're just hearing that. And now you want it just, which is fine. It's just that we need to kind of know what maybe everybody's wasting their time other than location because you feel, which is, it's your job, that we just need Carson City, and then whatever goes on it is going to be, I understand the locations you're seeking our input, but it sounds like you're seeking less input on what goes on it. Is that right?
No, I think that's all valuable. I think the locations, based on user experience, is very valuable, and I think that's really going to be helpful, especially if we have maps and we can help staff. There's 20 access points to this property. Well, where people are accessing those properties, that's a great location for signage. I think it's all beneficial. I don't know what the sign's going to look like. I haven't decided that. It's not up to me to decide. I want your feedback. But I just want a consistent look. Maybe all the signs are brown. Maybe they're all green. I just want it to be consistent. Right now, we have literally 40 different types of signs everywhere we go. Different sizes, different materials, locations all over the place. It's like a sign cemetery at some of our parks. So it's not user-friendly. People aren't using them. They're not reading them. It's not helpful. So we want to minimize the amount of signs. We want to prioritize the wording. I think we're really on the same page, honestly.
I've got a question, because I guess I misunderstood what the task was. So we're not talking trail signs, we're talking prohibition signs.
It's everything. It's
Because
everything.
what
from the
I'm
entrance.
envisioning is like the signage we did on the Ash to Kings Trail.
Right.
At the trailhead, we have a big kiosk that gives us prohibitions, et cetera. Then on the trail, it's wayfinding and things like that.
It's
So-
all of those things.
Okay.
So if we have signs or trails throughout Carson City, our trail signage needs to be consistent on every trail. Right now, we don't have that. So that's part of this. It's wayfinding.
Part, we have no signage.
It's
on
portal
the trails.
signs. I mean, but that's a great example. We need that. But what's the signage going to look like? What's our standard? So people can get used to that. And it should we look at, Forest Service and BLM and try to be consistent, especially when we're providing portals to those areas.
Okay. Any more sign discussion before we get to Donna leading the blind?
You ready? Okay. Ellen and I had a meeting.
Microphone.
We've had, one or two meetings, and we first established what was wrong with the website. And the big thing is, when you go to look at the website, it's just too cluttered. There's actually two lists to pick from, and it's not clear whether you're going to Parks and Rec or you're going to open space. And then when you pick one, you've, again, got two lists to work from, which are pretty much the same but a little bit different. So that was the big issue. And then when you pick on a particular area and you click on it for information on that area, all you get is a map that shows every park and open space in Carson City, and you cannot, if you click on any one of those, you just get the same information that was on the page before, and you cannot find out how to get there. So our recommendations were, first, that we unclutter it, and that the very first page should only have a limited number of buttons, we're calling them. It's just easy ways to identify them. So the ones we're looking at are, you could select Parks and Rec, open space, a map of all open space and Parks and Recreation properties color-coded as to who is who. Trails, OHV areas, registration, facility rentals, special events, a link to Carson City Visitors Bureau for that, contact information, and how to volunteer. So then, under open space, a list of the open space properties, and I'll go on to a little bit. Let me scroll down to Bellingham. In looking at other sites, I found Bellingham, City of Bellingham. And when you look at this one, it's beautiful. It's absolutely simple. It's very easy to know what you want, what you're looking for. And so basically, we met with IT from the city, which was really a great meeting. And she said, yeah, she can put that together. Do we have a time frame from her?
I don't think we worked out a time frame with Rachel.
But she sounded like she was going to get right on it. That's the way it sounded anyway. But yeah, she says that she's all for it and she can do this easily, which is really great. And one of the things in doing research, we found there's another site that's okay, but not as good as Bellingham. That's like the best. But I did find in Adams County Open Space, which I think is in Colorado, their website's terrible. It's as bad as ours. But they did have one page that is really neat, and I'd like to see us add it, in that it designates each open space, how it was acquired, how much it was acquired for, when, what's nice about that property. And this would be a great way for us to show that not only did we just use the 0.25% sales tax that we've got, that the open space has gotten grants and everything to double the money that we got from taxes. Because, I'm always hear people saying, you're just spending all of our money, and well, this will show, we can direct them, well, go here, and you'll see exactly how we have spent the monies. So I just thought that was just really a fantastic thing. So we are, Carson City IT is already working on this because she's actually designated to work on this piece of it for us, right? And I don't know if you've all been going to the city website recently, but they've really streamlined that. It looks a lot like Bellingham. And so I have high hopes that we're going to start to see progress on Parks and Rec side really fast. The other things that we did recommend were under the website, the open space page is open space, how the tax dollars were spent, history, regulations for use, specific regulations for each property, and a link to our agenda and minutes directly from that page to the Open Space Advisory Committee, and all plan documents for the open space. And then one of the other recommendations, Toby's recommendation, I guess the city already has it, is a tracking on usage of the website so that we know who's going where, where people are going. So anyway, that's, the next step is that we're going to add a Parks and Rec because we do share the website with them. And then actually my group, my evening walking group, my conditioning hiking group in the evenings, because it's wintertime, we're a smaller group. We're about 6 to 8 people now. And we're in the dark, so I'm doing streets and lit and flats and everything. So we decided we're going to take a map of all the parks and open spaces around Carson City because we need amenities checked on all the parks. And we're just going to hike from park to park every night and do our checks. So the same thing that we will do for the signage. And so then we need to develop what we want on that one page about how we acquired property, what information we want. So we need to develop that piece. And then I'm hoping I can get my people, my walking groups, to each take a site and go online and look at gather that information so that we have it to put into that page. Any questions?
Are you also going to do a fact check amenity on the open space part or just the parks part?
Both.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to you. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And, it really is. And my frustration is eased. All right, so, and I get the fact that you're going to unclutter it. You're going to make it real user-friendly so people can actually go on. I'm coming in from out of town, or I've never used open space, and I can see what we own. It's color-coded and where the trails are. When you're getting into who the members are and, and I love the acquisition. I think that's so important, just a little piece, because I think people would be interested in knowing this family gave this to us. I mean, there's a history to each of these pieces. But like the details, like the minutes and stuff, that could be maybe down like way below the fold so that we limit the number of buttons on the top, right?
Well, there's only going to be, under open space, that page. Sorry. There's only going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons.
Perfect.
So, and the same thing on the first page, I think there's 8 buttons. But it's limiting the choices so that it's really clear, well, if I want to know about open space, I'm going to push this button. And then under open space, if I want trails, I push this button.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and I also have the app.
Oh, wow.
So, under the app.
Hey, Donna, could I interrupt you for a
Yeah.
second? I have just a thought. The city person that you've been in contact with, the IT person, do you know if does anybody know if there's been any communication with like Matt Lawton, the new GIS guy for the city, the asset manager, I think is, he is the guy to get in contact with for the web map so that those pieces of information that pop up when you click on something are accurately portrayed. He would be the guy to use for that piece.
So we're working with 2 people. We're working with Rachel Snyder at IT. She's in charge of the website. She's also the one, if you've seen a lot of the videos posted to the website, she's created all of those videos from scratch herself. So if we wanted a video about open space and our mission and all the great things that we do and how much Q18 money we've leveraged, things like that, she can create great visual pieces for us to do that. And then I met with Matthew Lawton today. I know him very well. He'll be great to tie in with that. So we're going to get Rachel to tie up sort of that framework, and then it'll definitely link into his efforts.
That's good to hear. Awesome.
Thank you.
Then the app, there's two types of basically apps out there. There are a lot of user-created apps, like Trail Forks is one of them, or is it Trail Forks, Trail Link? Trail Forks, yeah. It's a mountain biking app, so people take a mountain bike ride, they download their ride, it then shows up on the app, other people can find it. The problems with those is it's difficult to control whether or not they're on legal trails, and it's not specific to an area. It's all over the country. It's the whole U.S. So I would personally not recommend that. I mean, we are going to be on those apps. That's a given. But I think we need to actually purchase an app specifically for Carson City for our trails. And there are certain companies that do that. And the one that, to be honest with you, you can look at the whole thing. It's all in your packet, all the stuff I did. But GutHook is floated to the top as like a Cadillac app. It is beautiful. When you're using that app, like your iPhone or your Android, it shows you exactly where you are on that trail. You can't get off of the trail without you seeing that. It shows you how far you are from the next waypoint, from the next, and there's photographs of each waypoint. It has elevation gain loss. I mean, I used it for the Tahoe Rim Trail, and I was backpacking with someone who kept, we'd come to a fork in the trail, and she'd go, oh, yeah, it's this way, it's this way. She knew every time. And every time, within a few minutes, I go, no, we're not we're on the wrong trail. Finally, by the third time, she says, what does GutHook say? And it shows water sources, campsites. Now, we would not need as much, but I happened to be talking to Kyle at Convention and Visitors Bureau. They're willing to put money into this app. So if we could divide the cost of the app between Parks and Rec, the Visitors Bureau, and us, we could afford something like this that would be wonderful. Anybody could come into town, download this app, and we would have to pay for it. Now, the way you get some of the GutHook apps, most of the GutHook apps now, you purchase them, like I purchased the one for the TRT. But if Carson City purchases it, then it would be free to users. So anybody could come into town, say, I want to go for a hike. They could see, okay, it's this many miles, this much elevation gain, loss. Oh, this is some pictures of sites I would see on the trail. Go take the hike. Yeah.
What does it cost?
We don't know. Kyle is going to be talking to them.
Sounds wonderful.
I mean, this guy does some, you can go in and look at some of his stuff. Go to GutHook.com, and he's done the Appalachian Trail, the PCT, all the big trails, but now he's starting to move into areas to do this. Any of the others are just not quite as nice. So that's kind of what we.
Well, thank you, Donna. That's great. Do we have any public comment? Anything more from our working groups? Thank you all for your efforts. We'll just keep working at it. Hopefully we've heard, I think some really interesting things tonight, so look forward to getting some of those put into effect. Next item, 4C, staff update on activities, projects, 4B, Department Strategic Planning, Organizational structure and recruitment for vacant positions. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the spirit of time, I'll keep it very brief, but our department, the entire department, all divisions, recreation, parks, and open space are going through a strategic planning process. Right now, the department has no clear mission or vision or strategic priorities and no real collective vision. So this is a bottom-up effort. It involves every single employee that's employed with the department, and it's a really interactive process where people fill out surveys, they meet in person. It's making sure that every employee is heard in creating that vision. So we're working on that right now, and I did want to thank the chair. He participated in a brief session with our partners, which is called On Strategy. They're facilitating this for us. And each of the chairs, so the Open Space Advisory Committee, the Parks and Recreation Commission, our city manager, we're all, and our chair for the Shade Tree Council, we're all part of this effort too, so we can hear your vision, your ideas, how we can improve in the future and support your efforts as well. And we'll be bringing stuff back as our progress happens through this process, and make sure you're involved with all of that and as we go forward. But our goal is to finish this before the budget process, and I would like the budget process to fit in with this as well. So if it's not part of our strategic goals or priorities and how we manage our workloads and our vision moving forward, you know, we want to kind of budget accordingly. So it should hopefully dovetail together is my vision. And then just briefly, just so you're all aware of our vacant positions, we, as Ann mentioned before, she's working on the job description for the Trails Coordinator. Our hope is to recruit and hopefully get someone on by the end of the year, which is great. We also have a vacant Recreation Superintendent position, which we've had 45 applicants. We're down to 5. We're going to have interviews at the beginning of November. We're restructuring the Recreation Division of the department, and then we'll be hiring a Recreation Program Manager position as well. So we have a few vacant positions that we're hopefully going to have all filled by the end of the year.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Any questions or comments for Jennifer? Any public comment? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4C, activities, projects, and grants located on open space properties within the Carson River area. Ann and Rich.
I will leave it up to you, Mr. Chair. The report does provide a summary of our activities. With the late time, we weren't planning necessarily to go into each of the projects. I'll leave that up to you. But on this first one, one item I would like to point out that on November 1st, on the first item, the Carson River Mercury Superfund site, the Carson Waters Subconservancy District will be doing guided tours and a history and talking about the issues that we have along the Carson River. If any of you would like to do that, that phone number is there for the Subconservancy District to call yourself and schedule a seat on the van. Mr. Chair, would you like for us to go through any other items?
On the SNPLMA grant application, when do we expect to hear from the Department of Interior?
I don't have a date for you.
Okay. Any other committee comments or questions regarding the activities?
Just on the SNPLMA, being ranked number 5 out of 18, does that indicate to you that it's really a very good chance that we're going to get that, or?
Great chances.
Okay.
Out of the 18 applications, I think in the first round, 12 moved on to the second round, and we were number 9. In that second round, 3 or 4 of them got bumped out and said that they really weren't eligible because they were so behind on their other projects. And so that bumped us up, and I would say 99% chance we're there.
Do they always award the amount that you request, or can they cut that back?
They can cut it back, but right now it looks like we will receive $1.8 million, which was our request.
I do have one question. The concrete thing in the Carson River Canyon that got torn out, is that being put back up, or?
Not yet at this time. We did just get the police report. I am going to ask our risk management if we can file, what do you call it?
Insurance claim?
Like, it's like an insurance claim. We have like a treasury fund, because it is a small amount. The total damages was $5,500, so that's not small, but for city insurance, it is. So there is a special fund. So we are going to ask if we can receive money from that fund for replacement of all the signs that were vandalized.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Public comments? All right. As you can see, there's a lot of staff things going on. I'm not sure that boat shouldn't have been sold at auction, but. Okay. Next item, 4D. Activities, projects, and grants throughout other areas managed by Open Space. Ann and Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to the previous item, I will leave it up to you in the committee if you'd like further discussion. But one item that I'd like to point out is the Eastern Sierra Trails Coalition. The annual Trail Summit is scheduled November 4th in Reno. And on here, I just said I don't have further information, but you can contact me, and probably Donna has further information if you would like to register. I think registration's $20.
Yeah, for an individual, $50 for a.
But if you'd like more information, you can contact either of us.
And
it's
the
also-
flyers are out.
And you register through the Tahoe Rim Trail Association, so you can go directly there and find it.
Great. Any other comments, anything you want to discuss or have staff discuss further on that item? Any public comment? All right, hearing none, we will move along. Are there any member announcements or requests for information? All right. Future agenda items, anything we haven't talked about already? Okay, last shot for public comment. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Okay.